Chapter 9:33. The commotion in the Emperor's palace seems to have disappeared. Not far away, Ao Feng turned around and looked at the Emperor's palace. Just a moment ago, he clearly sensed that Qin Chuan had suddenly burst out with an extremely powerful force. However, this amazing force was easily destroyed by the black-robed man. It did not even cause a ripple. Yes, Qin Chuan's force has completely disappeared. That person is too strong. Zhao Deng's expression was very ugly. He could not help but show a touch of sadness in his eyes. In his opinion, Qin Chuan must have died in the hands of the black-robed man. He sacrificed himself to cover their escape. We can't let Qin Chuan die in vain. Ao Feng clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. We must find the runestones and find a chance to avenge Qin Chuan. Let's go first. Zerg will be here soon. Zhao Deng looked at the direction of the Emperor's palace and pursed his lips. We will definitely avenge Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan had sacrificed himself in order to protect them. As friends, they definitely wanted to avenge Qin Chuan. However, with their current strength, they would only be sending themselves to their deaths if they turned back. Therefore, what they needed to do now was to maintain their rationality and continue to search for talisman stones in order to plan for the future. After making up their minds, Ao Feng and Zhao Deng turned around and left resolutely. They continued to search for the rune stones in the Blizzard Palace. With the help of the Yeti, it was relatively easy for them to avoid Zerg's search. Otherwise, they would not dare to continue to move around the Blizzard Palace so blatantly. While Ao Feng and Zhao Deng were searching for the runestones, the black-robed man had already entered the Emperor's palace. He looked around and finally looked at Otto, who was imprisoned in the corner. He asked faintly, "You are the one who tipped us off, right?" Otto heard the black-robed man's words and grinned. "That's right. It's me." This was not the first time Otto had communicated with the black-robed man, but this was the first time he saw the black-robed man. However, he did not have any respect for the black-robed man at all. He acted rather casually, as if he did not take the black-robed man's previous strong performance to heart. "I didn't think that the second prince would betray his father." The black-robed man looked at Otto with disdain in his eyes. "Although what you did was in line with our interests, it doesn't mean that I think highly of you." "Ah, I've never asked you to look up to me. Besides, I might not even look up to you." Otto sneered. "I'm just using you to remove some obstacles for me. Do you really think that I'm willing to be your dog?" Hearing Otto's words, the black-robed man coldly snorted and said, "What a sharp mouth. You didn't kill me, and you're still talking to me. Do you have something to ask me?" Aadu smiled and said to the black-cloaked man, "As long as you swear to bring Ao Feng back and let me kill him myself, I will tell you everything I know. Otherwise, don't even think about getting a single word out of my mouth." Now, Odo had nothing left to lose. He had gone completely mad and was not afraid of death at all. The black-robed man took a deep look at Otto and replied, "I promise you that I will bring Ao Feng back and let you kill him yourself." Otto laughed and said to the black-robed man, "Then I'll answer your questions while I'm still willing to. If you have any questions, ask them quickly." Although Otto's attitude was very annoying to the black-robed man, he did not want to argue with Otto. He simply asked, "Where's a rune stone?" "I don't know," Otto quickly replied. "I've been looking for it here for 2 months, and they've also been looking for it for more than 2 days. Both of them have found nothing." Hearing Otto's answer, the black-robed man frowned and asked, "Are you saying that the rune stone is not in the Blizzard Palace?" "No, what you said is the opposite of the truth. I'm sure that the rune stone is in the Blizzard Palace, but I don't know where the old man hid it." Otto looked at the black-robed man. The Blizzard Palace has an intelligent system called the Snowman. As long as you can get the initial password of the Snowman, you'll have the highest authority to investigate anything related to the Blizzard Palace. As far as I know, only the old man knows the initial password. After hearing Otto's words, the black-robed man's face could not help but become completely gloomy. He thought that he would be able to find the rune stone here, but he did not expect there to be so many twists and turns inside. If he had known this, he would not have let Sang Na kill Odyssey so quickly. Otto saw the black-robed man silence and seemed to think of something. He could not help but show a playful smile on his face and asked, You haven't killed the old man, have you? Hearing Otto's words, the black-robed man said in a deep voice, "Other than Odyssey, who else would know the initial password of the snowman? I've already said before that other than the old man, no one else knows. Even the company that produces the intelligent system of the snowman does not know." Otto spread out his hands and said to the black-robed man, "It seems that you can only use the stupid method to slowly find a rune stone in the Blizzard Palace." The black-robed man heard this and said to Otto, "The rune stone has a very special force field. As long as you are close to it, you can definitely sense it. You have been in the Blizzard Palace for 2 months. Haven't you sensed any special force field?" "Sorry to disappoint you. I didn't gain anything." Otto laughed. "If I can sense the existence of the special force field, I will definitely be able to find the rune stone." "Do you think that after I get the rune stone, I will still stay here and wait for you to capture me one by one? So you don't know anything?" The black-robed man stared at Otto with sharp eyes. "Are you using this meaningless information to negotiate with me?" No, it's not that my information is meaningless, but that your actions are too fast." Otto smiled. "If you hadn't killed the old man too early, you might have been able to get the initial password of the snowman from the old man. Also, don't think about guessing the initial password." Otto paused for a moment and said, "There is only one chance. Once you enter the wrong password, it will start the reset program of the snowman. At that time, the snowman will become ignorant and completely lose its value." "Bastard!" The black-robed man was furious when he heard this. He really did not expect that he would be happy for nothing. Seeing that the black-robed man was angry, Otto was very sensible and did not say anything, so as not to provoke the black-robed man and make him do something irrational to him. Just as the Emperor's hall fell into silence, no one noticed that a pair of eyes was staring at them in a corner. Chapter 9:34. In a corner, Qin Xuan looked at the black-robed man who was only a few dozen meters away from him. His eyes could not help but flash with a sharp glint. "The black-robed man did not discover me even at such a close distance. It seems that they have really been deceived by the Hall of Heaven and can't sense the existence of the illusory matrix. If I approach the black-robed man and attack him now, will I be discovered?" Thinking of this, Qin Xuan hesitated for a moment and gave up the idea of sneak attacking the black-robed man. Not to mention that the black-robed man was far stronger than him, it would be extremely difficult for him to seriously injure the black-robed man. Moreover, he was in the dark while the black-robed man was in the light. He could use this advantage to do many things. There was no need to waste it on attacking the black-robed man. Compared to attacking the black-robed man, Qin Xuan thought that the most important thing now was to crack the secret of the Hall of Heaven. If he guessed correctly, they were not in the Hall of Heaven at all, but in an extremely sophisticated illusory matrix. The illusory matrix he had set up earlier was unintentionally assimilated by the Hall of Heaven. That was why the black-robed man could not sense his existence. Trying to find a rune stone in an illusory matrix? That's a joke. Qin Xuan looked around and muttered in a low voice, "If I want to crack the illusory matrix, I have to find the eye of the matrix. But before that, I have to think of a way to lure the black-robed man and the others out." Now that Qin Xuan was in the illusory matrix, his movements were restricted. He could not lure the black-robed man away, so he could only pin his hopes on Ao Feng and Zhao Deng. He hoped that the two of them could make a big commotion outside and lure the black-robed man away. What Qin Xuan did not expect was that after only half an hour, there was an earth-shattering roar outside. "Emissary, we found the whereabouts of the 2 fugitives." Looking at the subordinate kneeling in front of him, the black-robed man asked indifferently, "What was that big commotion outside just now?" The subordinate immediately replied, "When we found them, they put up a strong resistance. At this time, they're using the system of the Blizzard Palace to fight back. We have not been able to catch them for the time being." Hearing the report, the black-robed man snorted coldly and said, "What trash?" As he spoke, the black-robed man walked outside and said to his entourage, "Leave 2 people to guard Otto. The rest of you follow me." Following the black-robed man's order, Other than the two subordinates who were left to guard Otto, the rest of the people left the Hall of Heavenly Suns and headed towards the place where they had discovered Ao Feng and Zhao Deng. They were prepared to capture Ao Feng and Zhao Deng. Qin Xuan, who had been hiding in the dark, could not help but smile. The opportunity he had been waiting for had finally arrived. In the empty Emperor's palace, two Zerg warriors in black tights stood together and whispered to each other as they watched Otto's movements. We've been in this backward galaxy for nearly 100 years. Now, we finally see a chance to leave. It's really not easy. That's true. If it wasn't for the generous reward for this mission, I definitely wouldn't be willing to come to this godforsaken place. The two insectoid warriors were discussing in low voices, completely oblivious to the dark shadow slowly approaching them from behind. It was the Grim Reaper's scythe, emanating an aura of death that made one's heart palpitate. Puff! Accompanied by the sound of a sharp object piercing through flesh, the sharp sword almost instantly shattered the internal organs of the Zerg warriors, destroying their souls. They did not have the chance to give any warning at all. Plop! The two Zerg warriors' bodies fell straight to the ground, making a dull sound. Otto subconsciously raised his head and looked over. When he saw Qin Xuan suddenly appear, Otto could not help but be stunned. "Why are you here?" Otto was extremely surprised. He clearly remembered that not long ago, Qin Xuan's aura had completely disappeared from this world under the suppression of the black-robed man. "Are you surprised?" "To be honest, I'm very surprised myself." Qin Xuan took a deep look at Otto. "Don't worry, I won't kill you." Otto chuckled when he heard Qin Xuan's words. He casually asked Qin Xuan, "If you don't kill me, aren't you afraid that I'll warn Zerg? If I warn them now, with their speed, they'll be back in less than 10 seconds. Qin Xuan looked at Otto meaningfully and said to Otto, "You can warn Zerg, but I can remind you that you'll definitely regret it." Otto did not believe Qin Xuan's words. He asked back, "What's the reason?" Qin Xuan chuckled and said lightly, "The reason is that I've discovered the secret of the Emperor's palace. I know where the rune stone is hidden. Don't you want to see what the rune stone looks like?" Otto subconsciously exclaimed when he heard Qin Xuan's reply, "You've discovered the secret of the Emperor's palace? What is it? Tell me." Odu was about to go crazy. He had been searching for clues in the Hall of Heaven for 2 months, but he couldn't find any clues. Qin Xuan had only been here for 2 days, and he had already discovered the secret of the Hall of Heaven. How is this possible? On one hand, Otto did not believe Qin Xuan's words. On the other hand, he hoped that Qin Xuan would be able to solve the mystery of the Emperor's palace and find the runestone. "You really want to see the runestone with your own eyes, right?" Qin Xuan smiled and said to Otto, "In that case, you'll have to watch my performance." A look of struggle appeared on Aodu's face when he heard this. After hesitating for a long time, he gritted his teeth and said to Qin Xuan, "All right, I'll watch your performance here. If you dare to lie to me, I'll make you regret it." Qin Xuan heaved a sigh of relief when he heard Aodu's reply. If he couldn't stabilize Aodu, he really didn't know how to buy himself enough time to break through the illusion array in the Emperor's palace. Fortunately, although Aodu was a little crazy, it wasn't on the same side as the Zergs, giving him room to operate. After adjusting his state, Qin Xuan took out the Qilin pen given to him by the Tushan clan and began to inscribe a rune formation. Otto was stunned when he saw Qin Xuan's actions. When he saw the type of rune formation that Qin Xuan was inscribing, he could not help but be shocked. He said in an extremely shocked tone, "You're inscribing a rune formation to break an illusion? Is there an illusion formation in the Emperor's palace? The rune stone is hidden in an illusion formation. You're not that stupid." Qin Xuan took a deep breath and said to Otto, "This is my guess, and it's very likely to be the truth. As for whether the runestone is in an illusion formation or not, you'll find out later." Chapter 935. Illusory Array, Illusory Array. Why didn't I think of it? Otto waved his fist regretfully and smashed it on the ground. If he had guessed that there was an illusory array in the Emperor's palace, the runestone would have been his. At this time, Qin Xuan could no longer care about Otto. He put all his energy into inscribing the rune array and completed the last stroke of the illusory array bit by bit. Buzz! The illusory array flashed with a dazzling golden light and scattered in all directions. Every place in the Emperor's palace that came into contact with the light of the illusory array fluctuated and flickered, then returned to normal. It didn't look any different from before, but it felt completely different. Sure enough, the Emperor's palace is hidden under an illusory array. Qin Chuan saw the illusory array shatter bit by bit and couldn't help but show a touch of excitement on his face. When the illusory array was completely broken, the rune stone hidden in it would naturally be revealed. When the illusory array finally dispersed, the real Emperor's palace finally appeared in front of Qin Chuan. A thumb-sized diamond-shaped stone that emitted a purple light also appeared in front of Qin Chuan. Rune stone. Otto stared at the rune stone floating in the Emperor's palace, his eyes full of greed. In order to obtain this rune stone, he had paid a great price, and now the rune stone was right in front of him. He could touch it as long as he stretched out his hand. Otto excitedly stretched out his hand, but what he touched was a seal, not a rune stone. Qin Chuan looked at the rune stone that was faintly flickering with extremely special runes and whispered, "Is this the rune stone? A rune sword? Is that what you need?" The rune sword in Qin Chuan's brain released extremely excited and emotional fluctuations to Qin Chuan. It was clearly telling Qin Chuan that this was the rune stone, and it was what he needed the most right now. "I'll get it for you now." Qin Chuan stretched out his hand and grabbed the rune stone. At this moment, the rune stone suddenly released an extremely shocking and special force field, causing the sky and earth to change color. In the distance, the black-robed man who was about to personally capture Ao Feng and Zhao Deng suddenly turned around and stared at the Emperor's palace. His aura surged, and the pressure was astonishing. This is the force field of the rune stone. Once he thought of this, the black-robed man no longer cared about anything else. His figure flashed as he charged towards the Emperor's hall. When the others saw this, they followed closely behind. In the blink of an eye, the people who had surrounded Ao Feng and Zhao Deng had completely disappeared. They're gone. The rune stone has appeared. Ao Feng turned to look in the direction of the Hall of Heavens and said excitedly, "The talisman stone is indeed in the Hall of Heavens. Let's..." At first, Ao Feng wanted to say, "Let's hurry over." However, when he thought of the black-robed man's strength and how insignificant they were, his expression turned extremely ugly. The black-robed man had already led his men to the Emperor's palace. Even if they followed him now, they would not have a chance to snatch the rune stone from the black-robed man. "We've already missed our chance." Zhao Deng sighed. No, it's Qin Chuan's aura. He's in the Emperor's palace." Suddenly, Zhao Deng's eyes widened. He had clearly sensed Qin Chuan's aura in the direction of the Emperor's palace. When he heard Zhao Deng's words, Ao Feng was slightly taken aback. Soon after, he also sensed the presence of Qin Chuan's aura. Qin Chuan's aura had clearly disappeared earlier, but now it had suddenly appeared. Moreover, it had appeared at the same time as the talisman stone. Could it be? It's Qin Chuan who found the rune stone. The rune stone is in his hands. Ao Feng could not help but feel excited. If the rune stone was in Qin Chuan's hands, they might have a chance to fight for it. In the Emperor's palace, when the rune stone suddenly released a force field fluctuation, Qin Chuan's expression suddenly changed. He quickly reached out and held the rune stone in his hand. He wanted to put the rune stone into his storage ring, but the ring could not contain the rune stone. Just as Qin Chuan was panicking, the rune sword finally could not help but act. With just a thought, the rune stone whooshed into Qin Chuan's brain and came to the side of the rune sword. When the rune stone entered Qin Chuan's brain, the force field fluctuation disappeared. Qin Chuan had just breathed a sigh of relief. Before he could make his next move, an extremely terrifying aura suddenly appeared behind him. It was coming at him at an alarming speed. "Put down the rune stone, and I'll spare your life." Hearing the angry roar of the black-robed man behind him, Qin Chuan made the choice to escape without hesitation. His body flashed, and he appeared outside the emperor's palace, plunging into the snowy mountain. Bastard! When he saw Qin Chuan's attempt to escape, the black-robed man was unable to restrain his anger. He raised his hand and waved it. A turbulent wave of spiritual energy instantly appeared behind Qin Chuan and brazenly charged towards Qin Chuan. Pooh! Under the black-robed man's angry attack, Qin Chuan was unable to resist at all. He took the full brunt of the attack, and his face instantly turned pale. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. His aura instantly withered, and he was extremely weak. Whoosh! Qin Chuan endured the pain in his body and plunged into the snowy mountain. His aura suddenly disappeared. The black-robed man did not expect that his attack would not be able to kill Qin Chuan. When he wanted to attack again, Qin Chuan had already disappeared. This caused him to be unable to restrain his anger, and he roared into the sky. I'm so angry. Everyone listen up. Seal off the snowy mountain and dig 3 feet into the ground to find Qin Chuan. If you can't find him, all of you can die. Qin Chuan did not know how long he had been unconscious for. When he woke up, he only felt that his entire body was falling apart. There was not a single part of his body that was not in pain. He did not even have the strength to move a finger. He looked at the dark golden walls around him in confusion and whispered, "Where is this?" Whoosh! The illusory figure of a small armored dragon suddenly appeared in front of Qin Chuan. It looked at Qin Chuan with a worried gaze, as if it was asking about Qin Chuan's physical condition. Looking at the illusory little armored dragon in front of him, Qin Chuan was slightly stunned and asked, "How did you become a spirit? Where am I?" When the little armored dragon heard Qin Chuan's words, it stretched out its small palm and patted its stomach, then stuck out its tongue. Qin Chuan was a little surprised when he saw this and said, "I'm in your stomach?" The little armored dragon nodded. At that time, Qin Chuan was in a state of near death. Because the runic sword was controlling the rune stone, it was temporarily unable to save Qin Chuan. In order to save Qin Chuan's life, the little armored dragon could only open its mouth and swallow Qin Chuan into its stomach. If it had not made such a decision at the critical moment, Qin Chuan might have died in the black-robed man's hands. Chapter 9:36. You can actually swallow me? Although this was already an established fact, Qin Chuan still felt surprised in his heart. The little armored dragon was only the size of his fist, and was even smaller than that. How did it swallow him in one bite? When the little armored dragon heard Qin Chuan's words, it raised its hand and scratched its head in a silly manner. In fact, it did not know how it swallowed Qin Chuan in one bite. It just thought so at that time and did so. Everything seemed to go with the flow, and there was no force at all. Seeing that the little armored dragon could not give a reason, Qin Chuan chuckled and said, "Forget it. I won't ask you. You don't know how to speak, so I'm making things difficult for you." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, the little armored dragon immediately puffed up its face and appeared to be very angry, as if it was angry because Qin Chuan said that it did not know how to speak. Qin Chuan smiled when he saw this. The little armored dragon was the same as the runic sword. They both had very distinct emotional changes and had extremely high intelligence. Perhaps one day in the future, they would also be able to speak. "You bully!" Just as Qin Chuan was thinking about this in his mind, a slightly immature voice suddenly sounded in his ears. When he heard this voice, Qin Chuan was slightly stunned, and then he looked at the little armored dragon in astonishment and said with some shock, "Was it you who spoke just now?" The little armored dragon nodded vigorously and pointed its chubby little finger at Qin Chuan and said, "You bully!" When he heard the little armored dragon repeat its previous words, Qin Chuan could not help but widen his eyes. He had just made fun of the little armored dragon for not knowing how to speak, but he did not expect the little armored dragon to turn around and slap him in the face. It spoke human language. "Oh my God, you actually opened your mouth to speak." Qin Chuan was a little surprised and wanted to sit up, but just as he moved, his body hurt terribly. He could not help but grit his teeth and lie back down, shouting, "It really hurts too much." When the little armored dragon saw Qin Chuan's unbearable pain, It grinned and said, "You deserve it." Seeing the little armored dragon's gloating expression, Qin Xuan could not help but roll his eyes. For some reason, he suddenly did not expect the little armored dragon to speak. Every two sentences that this little thing spoke were not pleasant to the ears. However, the little armored dragon was only mocking Qin Xuan verbally. It did not intend to leave Qin Xuan in the lurch. It had taken out a small golden jar from somewhere. The jar was filled to the brim with a golden-colored viscous liquid. The viscous liquid emitted a rich fragrance. It looked extremely alluring. Looking at the jar that little armored dragon was carrying over, Qin Xuan asked curiously, "What is this? Why does it look so familiar?" Roar. The little armored dragon opened its mouth and let out a cry. It sounded like a dragon's roar, but the little armored dragon's performance was somewhat nondescript and extremely strange. However, Qin Xuan understood what the little armored dragon was trying to express. "You mean to say that the liquid in this jar is true dragon's water?" The little armored dragon nodded. "That's right, this was true dragon's water." Seeing the little armored dragon nod, Qin Xuan's face could not help but reveal a touch of excitement. He still had some understanding of true dragon's water. This was a holy medicine for healing injuries. With this jar of true dragon's water, his injuries could definitely be healed in a short period of time. Without waiting for Qin Xuan to speak, the little armored dragon had already poured the entire jar of true dragon's water onto Qin Xuan's body, allowing the true dragon's water to flow over Qin Xuan's body and heal the injuries on Qin Xuan's body. Seeing this, Qin Xuan hurriedly said, "What are you doing? You should let me consume it orally. It's too wasteful." Qin Xuan's words suddenly stopped here. He stared blankly as the little armored dragon opened its mouth and spat another jar full of true dragon's water into the jar. He said somewhat astonishingly, "Did you spit this out from your mouth?" The little armored dragon nodded and replied, "Yes, yes." Upon hearing this, Qin Xuan's expression suddenly became extremely interesting. He thought that this true dragon's water was the little armored dragon's private stash. He did not expect that it was actually the little armored dragon's saliva. When he thought of how he wanted to consume this true dragon's water orally, he felt his stomach churn. Fortunately, this was applied externally. If he saw the little armored dragon's saliva after consuming it orally, he was afraid that he would suffer for a while. Splash. The little armored dragon poured the true dragon's water on Qin Xuan's body. The two jars of true dragon's water smeared Qin Xuan's body all over, as if turning Qin Xuan into a golden sugar figure. It looked slightly comical. "Thank you." Qin Xuan grinned at the little armored dragon. He did not know if the little armored dragon had bad breath. After letting his imagination run wild for a while, Qin Xuan sank his mind into his brain, wanting to see the situation of the runic sword. However, he did not expect that the runic sword would disappear again. In its place was a purple ball he had never seen before. Looking at the purple ball in his brain that was emitting a special force field fluctuation, Qin Xuan's face revealed a hint of curiosity. The runic sword should be in this purple ball. As for how this purple ball came about, it was naturally related to the runic stone. After confirming that there was no way to contact the runic sword for the time being, Qin Xuan's consciousness returned to his body. He asked the little armored dragon, "Where are we now?" The little armored dragon did not speak. It raised its hand and waved. An image appeared in front of Qin Xuan. It was a vast expanse of whiteness that seemed to be snow. Seeing this scene, Qin Xuan understood that they should be hiding in the snow now. However, to be precise, it should be the little armored dragon hiding in the snow. With the little armored dragon's size, it would still be somewhat difficult for Zerg to find it. "Is your aura okay?" Qin Xuan was a little worried. Previously, the runic sword helped the little armored dragon to shield its aura. Now that the runic sword was repairing itself, could the little armored dragon continue to shield its aura without the protection of the runic sword? Hearing Qin Xuan's question, the little armored dragon patted its chest and replied, "No, no problem. That's true. If your aura leaked out, the black-robed man should have found us long ago. Qin Chuan smiled and asked the little armored dragon, "How long have I been unconscious?" The little armored dragon raised its hand and gestured 5 fingers at Qin Chuan, meaning that Qin Chuan had been unconscious for 5 days. 5 days have passed. Qin Chuan frowned slightly. 5 days might have passed in the blink of an eye if it was used for training. However, for someone like him who was in a difficult situation, it was an extremely long period of time. In these 5 days, the black-robed man would definitely have enough time for Zerg to control Ao Feng and Zhao Deng. Moreover, if the black-robed man knew him well enough, he would even make a move on with Cece and Sophie. Lu Zi would definitely not be spared. However, thinking of this, Qin Chuan's mood became a little heavy. He had to do something to attract the black-robed man's attention so that the black-robed man would not have the energy to deal with the people around him. Otherwise, the consequences would be unpredictable. Chapter 9:37. Trash. All of you are trash. In the heavenly palace, the black-robed man's angry roar spread far and wide. He looked at his subordinates kneeling in front of him and really wanted to kill them all. 5 days, 5 whole days have passed, and you can't even find a seriously injured divine transformation stage brat in such a small place. What use do I have for you? The black-robed man roared. Tell me, what use do you have for me? Faced with the black-robed man's anger, the subordinates all had a look of shame on their faces. It was not difficult for them to find a person in the vicinity of the Great Snow Mountain. However, they had searched the vicinity of the Great Snow Mountain more than 100 times and still could not find any trace of Qin Chuan. Seeing that his subordinates were silent, the black-robed man said in a low voice, I will give you 1 more day. If you still can't find Qin Chuan, I will definitely send you to meet your ancestors. Yes. The subordinates roared in response and turned to leave. They once again threw themselves into the search for Qin Chuan. After the subordinates left, the black-robed man slowly turned to look at Ao Feng and Zhao Deng, who were tied to a pillar. He said in a low voice, I have no time and patience to waste on you. I will ask you one last time. Are you really not willing to tell me the whereabouts of Qin Chuan's close friends? The black-robed man wanted to use Qin Chuan's close friends to force Qin Chuan to show himself. However, he did not know much about Qin Chuan. In addition, in order to obtain the rune stone, he had sent all his subordinates here. There was no one to investigate Qin Chuan. Therefore, he could only interrogate Ao Feng and Zhao Deng to obtain information about Qin Chuan. Hearing the black-robed man's question, Ao Feng and Zhao Deng remained silent. They would rather die than betray Qin Chuan. Seeing that Ao Feng and Zhao Deng were silent, the black-robed man sneered and asked, It seems that the 2 of you are willing to die bravely for your friendship with Qin Chuan. However, have you ever wondered why Qin Chuan was able to find rune stones? Ao Feng and Zhao Deng, who were originally unmoved, were slightly moved when they heard the black-robed man's last sentence. In fact, they were very curious about how Qin Chuan found the rune stone and how he was able to hide in the emperor's palace without being discovered by the black-robed man. Seeing that Ao Feng and Zhao Deng's curiosity had been piqued, the black-robed man let out a cold laugh and continued, Don't tell me you guys really think that Qin Chuan is a benevolent person who stayed behind to cover your retreat? You guys are too naive. The black-robed man snorted and said in an extremely low voice, Qin Chuan purposely stayed behind in the emperor's palace to buy time for you guys to escape. In fact, he was using you guys. After fighting with me, he suddenly disappeared and completely concealed his aura. You guys that didn't know better thought that Qin Chuan was a hero who sacrificed himself. In fact, he used some method to hide in the emperor's palace and then diverted my attention to you guys. When I led people to leave the emperor's palace to chase after you guys, he found an opportunity to kill the subordinate I left behind to guard Odin, and then took the opportunity to steal the rune stone. It's funny that you guys think that Qin Chuan is a benevolent person who is brave and resourceful. In fact, he is a cunning person who used your feelings to deceive you into being his cannon fodder and bait. Originally, Ao Feng and Zhao Deng believed in Qin Chuan without a doubt. However, when they heard the black-robed man's words, Their expressions couldn't help but become extremely ugly. This was because the black-robed man's words were reasonable, and they couldn't find any reason to refute him. Seeing the change in Ao Feng and Zhao Deng's expressions, the black-robed man chuckled and said, "Now that Qin Chuan has the rune stone and is hiding, I can't find him, so I can only focus on you guys. Believe it or not, if I kill you guys, Qin Chuan won't avenge you guys. Instead, he will thank me for killing you guys. Otherwise, if you guys survive and find him in the future and want to share the runestone with him, do you think he will agree or not?" Seeing that Ao Feng and Zhao Deng's expressions were getting uglier and uglier, the black-robed man continued to add fuel to the fire and said, "Now that you guys are tied up here and facing death, Qin Chuan is free and unfettered, peacefully studying his runestone. Are you guys really willing to accept this? If you guys are really willing to die for Qin Chuan, then I have nothing to say. I will kill you right now. 2 paths are placed in front of you. You guys can make your own choice." After saying this, the black-robed man calmed down and patiently waited for Ao Feng and Zhao Deng to make their choice. Ao Feng looked at Zhao Deng with eyes full of shock. He didn't know whether he should choose to believe Qin Chuan or the black-robed man. If Qin Chuan was really such a shameless and cunning person, then there was no reason for him to risk his life to seal the Insect King to protect Sinai City. At that time, Qin Chuan didn't even know about the rune stone. However, the black-robed man's words were reasonable and everything was perfect. Perhaps Qin Chuan was a righteous person in the past, but in the face of the temptation of the rune stone, Qin Chuan couldn't stay true to his heart. In order to obtain the rune stone, Ao Feng could even betray his own father. In order to obtain the rune stone, Qin Chuan was willing to betray 2 friends who had only known each other for a few days. The more Ao Feng thought about it, the more confused he became. He really didn't know whether to believe Qin Chuan or the black-robed man. Therefore, he hoped that Zhao Deng could help him. In the face of Ao Feng's pleading gaze, Zhao Deng was also confused. From an emotional point of view, he was willing to believe in Qin Chuan's friendship with them. However, from a rational point of view, the black-robed man's words were closer to reality. "Have you guys made up your minds?" The black-robed man spoke again. "Since you guys are still unwilling to betray that shameless Qin Chuan, I have no choice but to send you guys to hell." As he spoke, the black-robed man had already raised his hand. As long as his hand fell, he could easily kill Ao Feng and Zhao Deng. At this moment, an extremely shocking explosion suddenly occurred in the snowy mountain outside the Emperor's palace. "Zerg, you old bastard, I advise you to let go of my brothers immediately. Otherwise, I will kill all of you sooner or later." Qin Chuan's arrogant roar echoed throughout the snowy mountain, causing the black-robed man to stop in his tracks. "Ao Feng, Zhao Deng, Zerg's words can't be trusted. If I used you guys to deceive you, then let me fall into hell forever." After hearing Qin Chuan's words, Ao Feng and Zhao Deng finally calmed down. Since Qin Chuan could make such a vicious oath, it meant that Qin Chuan really treated them as friends. Ao Feng and Zhao Deng were relieved, but the black-robed man was furious. He turned around and flew towards the snowy mountain. However, Qin Chuan's presence had disappeared once again. No matter how the black-robed man attacked the snowy mountain, he could not find any trace of Qin Chuan. Chapter 9:38. Investigate. Send someone to investigate. I want to know everything about Qin Chuan. Capture all the people close to him. Pull out their tendons, skin them alive, and burn their souls. The furious black-robed man could no longer bear it. Without any scruples, he sent out his men to collect information about Qin Chuan and capture the people close to him. Then, he would let Qin Chuan taste the pain of losing his friends and family. If he could not force Qin Chuan out, he would swallow Qin Chuan alive, and this hatred would never be quenched. Seeing the black-robed man's flustered and exasperated look, Ao Feng and Zhao Deng revealed a carefree smile. Although they still had to face the crisis of death, seeing the black-robed man, the one who caused the chaos in the same galaxy, so sullen and miserable, made them feel quite comfortable. "Are you laughing? Isn't that funny? The black-robed man noticed the changes in Ao Feng and Zhao Deng's expressions, and his face could not help but turn uglier. The thing he hated the most now was to see people laughing at him, especially when the people laughing were his enemies and his captives. Keep laughing. When Qinchuan's relatives arrive, I will send you all to the guillotine one by one. No one will leave alive. The black-robed man let out an angry growl. He would definitely make these people regret it. Qinchuan did not know if what he was doing would work, but it was the best method he could think of. Regardless of whether it worked or not, he had to give it a try. As long as he could keep the black-robed man here, it would be considered a success. Just as Qinchuan was thinking about this, a sudden shout came from outside. Qinchuan, it's not too late for you to show yourself. We have already sent people to collect information about you and capture the people close to you. If you don't want to see them die one by one in front of you, it's best that you surrender immediately. Such shouts could be heard continuously in the snowy mountain region. This was the black-robed man's order. The purpose was to disturb Qinchuan's mind and force Qinchuan to do something to expose himself. After hearing these shouts, Qinchuan's expression turned ugly. The worst thing he expected had happened. If the black-robed man really searched for the people close to him, it would only take a few days at most to bring them back. By then, he would be in a very bad situation. What should I do? I have to find a way to stall these people. Qinchuan knew in his heart that if he continued to hide, the situation would become more and more disadvantageous for him. However, if he revealed himself now, with the injuries on his body, he wouldn't be able to resist at all and would be killed by the black-robed man. This was a dilemma. Should he sacrifice himself, or should he sacrifice others? He had to make a choice. After hesitating for a while, Qinchuan decided to show himself. As long as the black-robed man did not get the rune stone, he should not be in too much danger. Little Jiaolong, let me out. Qinchuan pursed his lips and said to the little Jiaolong, I have to go out. Hearing Qinchuan's words, the little Jiaolong's face could not help but reveal a conflicted expression. Previously, the rune sword had told him to take good care of Qinchuan. However, now that Qinchuan wanted to go out, he could not disobey Qinchuan. For a moment, he did not know what to do. Little Jiaolong, after I go out, I have a very important task for you to do. Qinchuan looked at the little Jiaolong and whispered a few words to it. The little Jiaolong looked at Qinchuan suspiciously. Will this work? Seeing the change in expression on the little Jiaolong's face, Qinchuan sighed and said, whether it works or not, I have to try. Seeing this, the little Jiaolong no longer tried to persuade Qinchuan. With a thought, its main body opened its mouth and spat out Qinchuan. After Qinchuan appeared, he immediately stood on top of the snow and shouted, Black-robed man, immediately summon all your subordinates back. I'm right here. I'm not running away. Almost at the same time, Qinchuan shouted, the black-robed man's figure had already appeared in front of Qinchuan. His eyes were fixed on Qinchuan, revealing endless killing intent and hatred. It was as if he wanted to pierce through Qinchuan. You'd better not do anything to me. The talisman stone is still in my hands. Qinchuan looked deeply at the black-robed man and said, if you don't want to never get the talisman stone, then it's best to restrain your violent temper. My injuries are still very serious. I can't endure any more torment. The black-robed man originally wanted to cut Qinchuan into pieces, but when he heard Qinchuan's words, he was so depressed that he almost vomited blood. No wonder Qinchuan had the courage to appear in front of him. It turned out that he had hidden the talisman stone. Hand over the talisman stone, and I can give you a quick death. Moreover, I promise not to touch the people close to you. At the same time, I will also let your 2 friends go. The black-robed man also saw that to deal with someone like Qinchuan, threatening Qinchuan himself was useless. He had to make a move on the people close to Qinchuan. Hearing the black-robed man's words, Qinchuan chuckled and said to the black-robed man, it's freezing here. How about we slowly talk in the Hall of Heaven? I want to see the situation of my 2 friends first before I decide if I want to use the talisman stone to exchange for a quick death. The black-robed man looked at Qinchuan with a gloomy gaze and coldly said, you'd better not think of playing any tricks with me. Don't worry, I won't. Qin Chuan said in all seriousness, "If I dare to play any tricks with you, you can directly slap me to death. You also know that I don't have any strength to resist right now." The black-robed man snorted coldly and swung his sleeves, bringing Qin Chuan back to the Hall of Heaven. After Qin Chuan landed, he looked at Ao Feng and Zhao Deng, who were tied to the pillars. He grinned and waved his hand, saying, "Good brothers, I'm here to accompany you." Seeing Qin Chuan being brought back by the black-robed man, Ao Feng sighed and said to Qin Chuan with mixed feelings, "Although I feel that you have made a very stupid decision, you are really a worthy friend and a trustworthy person." They had heard Qin Chuan's words clearly. They knew that Qin Chuan took the initiative to show up to protect the people close to him from being harmed by the black-robed man. If Qin Chuan did not show up, the people close to him would certainly die. However, thousands of years later, Qin Chuan would become the overlord of the universe with the help of the Talisman Stone. It was not impossible for him to avenge the deaths of these people. The great Tao was ruthless, but Qin Chuan's heart was filled with emotions. No matter what, this decision has been made. There is nothing to regret. Qin Chuan laughed and said to Ao Feng and Zhao Deng, "You don't have to worry too much about me. When the boat reaches the bridge head, it will cross the bridge. We still have a chance to survive." Chapter 939. The Black-Robed Man stood to the side. When he heard Qin Chuan telling Ao Feng and Zhao Deng that they still had a chance to live, his expression suddenly became extremely ugly. Now that Qin Chuan was already in prison, he still wanted to live. He really didn't take him seriously. "Qin Chuan, now that you've seen them, shouldn't you hand over the rune stone?" The black-robed man looked at Qin Chuan with gloomy eyes. "You'd better not play any tricks with me. Once you anger me, the consequences are definitely not what you want to see." Qin Chuan turned his head to look at the black-robed man and replied, "I can give you the rune stone, but you have to release the two of them first and let them leave Snow City." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, the black-robed man immediately said angrily, "Do you think you are qualified to negotiate with me?" Qin Chuan smiled and said to the black-robed man, "I'm not negotiating with you. You clearly said before that as long as I hand over the rune stone, you will let the two of them go and won't do anything to the people close to me. I'm just following what you said. Is there anything wrong with that?" When the black-robed man heard Qin Chuan's words, he was so depressed that he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. He really didn't expect that Qin Chuan would actually use his previous words to deal with him. "Okay, I can let them go. However, if you still refuse to hand over the talisman stone after they leave, I will definitely kill everyone around you and make you suffer so much that you will wish you were dead." The black-robed man snorted coldly and said to the two subordinates guarding Ao Feng and Zhao Deng, "Untie them, prepare a spaceship for them, and send them out of Snow City." When the subordinates heard the black-robed man's words, they immediately acted. They untied Ao Feng and Zhao Deng and unsealed the spiritual power in their bodies. Ao Feng and Zhao Deng faced all this with extremely complicated feelings. So complicated that they didn't know what to say at all. "Qin Chuan," Ao Feng looked at Qin Chuan with extremely moved eyes. He really didn't expect that in such a desperate situation, Qin Chuan would still want to rescue them and send them out of this dangerous place. As a friend, Qin Chuan really did everything he could. On the other hand, they were almost tempted by the black-robed man to betray Qin Chuan. Now that they thought about it, they really felt ashamed. Zhao Deng's mood was also extremely complicated. As a cultivator in the apotheosis stage, he had lived in this world for nearly 1,000 years. In the past, he had always interacted with other people because of benefits. This was the first time he truly tasted friendship. "Don't look at me like that." Qin Chuan chuckled and said to the two, "You didn't betray me, and I also won't abandon you. This is fair." The black-robed man might not know much about Qin Chuan, but Ao Feng and Zhao Deng had a very deep understanding of Qin Chuan. If Ao Feng and Zhao Deng had betrayed Qin Chuan, then the black-robed man's subordinates should have directly said with Cici or even Lu Zi's name when they threatened Qin Chuan. 5 days. Ao Feng and Zhao Deng were able to resist the black-robed man's threats for 5 days without betraying him. This was enough to gain his approval. Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Ao Feng and Zhao Deng felt even more ashamed in their hearts. This was because they knew very well that they had almost betrayed Qin Chuan. They didn't persist until the end like Qin Chuan thought. All right, stop putting on a show of brotherly love in front of me. Let's go. The black-robed man looked at Qin Chuan and the other two with disdain in his eyes. In his opinion, the path of cultivation was destined to be lonely. No one could accompany anyone all the way. In the end, everyone could only rely on themselves. Friendship, love, and even family were extremely cheap and meaningless. Odysseus betrayed his own father in order to get the rune stone. This was a very good example. Let's go. Qin Chuan said to Ao Feng and Zhao Deng, let's leave this place. Ao Feng and Zhao Deng gave Qin Chuan one last deep look, then turned and walked out. They boarded the spaceship that the black-robed man had prepared for them. After a thorough inspection to ensure that there were no problems, they piloted the spaceship and flew into outer space. The two of them left so quickly. Don't you regret it? The black-robed man looked at Qin Chuan and sneered, shouldn't true friends share weal and woe together? There's no point in them staying. Qin Chuan said lightly, you, on the other hand, don't try to drive a wedge between us. I won't fall for it. All right, now that they're gone, you can hand over the rune stone. The black-robed man said in a deep voice, you'd better not mention any more conditions to me. Letting the two of them go is my last tolerance for you. Qin Chuan looked at the black-robed man and replied, don't worry. When their spaceship leaves Snow City in your sphere of influence, I will definitely tell you where the rune stone is. The black-robed man snorted and did not speak anymore. He had already come this far, so he was not short of time. As long as Qin Chuan was in his hands, the rune stone would still be under his control. It was the same whether he got it sooner or later. About an hour later, news came from outer space. The spaceship that Ao Feng and Zhao Deng were on had successfully left Snow City and entered deep into the universe. After receiving this news, the black-robed man was about to ask Qin Chuan for the rune stone when a subordinate hurried over. It seemed that the subordinate had something important to report. Reporting to the emissary, our people found a king of sacred armor in the Snow Mountain. Hearing the subordinate's report, the black-robed man was slightly stunned. He immediately said in a deep voice, are your eyes playing tricks on you? How could there be a king of sacred armor in such a place? We thought so too at first, so I specially brought back the life signature of the creature suspected to be the king of sacred armor. Please identify it, emissary. While speaking, the subordinate projected the image of a fist-sized golden beetle in front of the black-robed man. This beetle looked no different from a human, and it looked very simple and cute. After seeing the beetle's image in the projection, the black-robed man's expression changed greatly. He was 100% sure that this was a king of sacred armor. There was no mistake. It's really a king of sacred armor. And it's so big. The black-robed man was shocked. He also had a king of sacred armor, but his king of sacred armor was only the size of thumb. Compared to the king of sacred armor in the projection, it was almost 10 times smaller. Could it be that this is a king of sacred armor of a senior of the sacred clan? But how did the king of sacred armor end up here? The black-robed man was full of doubts, but he did not think that this king of sacred armor had anything to do with Qin Chuan. This was because he did not think that an outsider like Qin Chuan could cultivate such a mature king of sacred armor. Chapter 940. Looking at the sacred armor king in the projection, the black-robed man decided that no matter how the sacred armor king ended up here, he had to take the sacred armor king for himself. Qin Chuan, the black-robed man said. Just as the black-robed man was about to force Qin Chuan to hand over the rune stone and then immediately go and subdue the sacred armor king, another subordinate came to report. Sir, the sacred armor king is moving at high speed toward the depths of the snowy mountain. We don't dare to stop it. Hearing the subordinate's report, The black-robed man's expression turned ugly. The Sacred Armor King is extremely rare in the Holy Clan, and such a huge Sacred Armor King is even rarer. If I can get my hands on this Sacred Armor King, my status in the clan will definitely soar. I might even be able to become the overlord of the universe without the help of the Rune Stone. No, although the Rune Stone is important, the Sacred Armor King is even more important. After a moment of struggle and consideration, the black-robed man immediately made a decision. He would first subdue the Sacred Armor King, then come back to ask Qin Chuan for the Rune Stone. Thinking of this, the black-robed man raised his hand and waved at Qin Chuan. A dark green rope flew out and tied Qin Chuan up, sealing the spiritual energy in Qin Chuan's body, turning Qin Chuan into an ordinary person. All of you, stay here and watch over him. If he dares to do anything strange, immediately cut off his arms and legs. The black-robed man snorted. If he escapes, I will kill your entire family. After instructing his subordinates, the black-robed man hurriedly left, preparing to subdue the Sacred Armor King. The Emperor's palace became quiet again. Amazing, really amazing. I really didn't expect you to be able to survive from that guy again and again. Otto looked at Qin Chuan and couldn't help but praise him. This was the first time he had seen someone as brave and resourceful as Qin Chuan, who didn't panic in the face of danger. Upon hearing Aodu's words, Qin Chuan glanced at him and said, "I admire you too. You're actually still alive." Qin Chuan also didn't expect Otto to still be alive. This guy had been imprisoned from the beginning, and until now, no one had thought of dealing with him. Should he say that he didn't have a sense of existence? Or should he say that he protected himself too well? Otto chuckled and said, "Haha, I'm still alive because of luck. But you're alive because of your courage and wisdom. That guy is too stupid. He didn't think that you were the one who created the Sacred Armor King. He just let you stay in the Hall of Emperor. That's stupid." Otto chuckled and said, "Haha, I'm still alive." Qin Chuan was speechless. Do you think an outsider like me would be better at nurturing the Scarab King than Zerg? If I had the ability to nurture such a big Scarab King, I would have just cooperated with Zerg. I wouldn't have to stay here as a prisoner. Although Qin Chuan thought that the appearance of the little armor dragon would definitely arouse the interest of the black-robed man, he never thought that the little armored dragon's position in the black-robed man's mind was far higher than the runestones. However, this was exactly what he wanted. As for Otto, Qin Chuan could not understand him. Even the black-robed man did not think that he had the ability to nurture the little armored dragon. Why was Otto so sure that he was the one who created the little armored dragon? No matter how you quibble, you can't change the fact. Otto chuckled. This time, I'd like to see how you're going to break out of this encirclement. Hearing Otto's words, the surrounding Zerg warriors subconsciously looked at Qin Chuan with a hint of vigilance in their eyes. Regardless of whether Otto's words were true or false, they would keep an eye on Qin Chuan and not give Qin Chuan any chance to escape. Qin Chuan could not help but curse Otto when he saw that the surrounding Zerg warriors were all focused on him. This guy was definitely doing this on purpose. Although Qin Chuan was unhappy, he did not show it on his face. He just smiled and closed his eyes as if he was going to sleep. However, at this moment, the insectoid warrior standing beside him stretched out his leg and kicked him. "Don't sleep. Open your eyes and speak. Otherwise, how would I know if you used a substitution technique to escape?" Hearing the insectoid warrior's words, Qin Chuan couldn't help but open his eyes. He looked at the insectoid warrior beside him and asked in astonishment, "What do you want me to say?" The Zerg warrior curled his lips and said, "You can say anything, but you can't stay still." Before the emissary left, he told us that if we let you escape, our whole family will die. Although this Zerg warrior was only at the nascent soul stage, he had no respect for Qin Chuan at all. It could not be helped. Qin Chuan was already a prisoner, so it was hard for people to respect him. Qin Chuan chuckled and said to the Zerg warrior, "If you want to listen to me, then I'll say something and send you to hell. How about that?" Before the Zerg warrior could say anything, an extremely violent thunder energy suddenly exploded in the Emperor's palace, instantly turning the palace into a sea of thunder. All the Zerg warriors guarding the Emperor's palace could not avoid the fate of being turned into charcoal by the thunder energy. Crackle. Otto looked at the sea of thunder outside, and his face could not help but reveal a hint of madness. He knew that Qin Xuan would never give up so easily. At this moment, the restriction that imprisoned Otto had become Otto's protective umbrella, allowing him to survive. The black-robed man sealed my spiritual energy before he left, but unfortunately, he forgot that I'm also a talisman array master. Qin Xuan sat up from the ground and looked at Otto and the seal. He said to him, "Congratulations, you survived again." Otto looked at Qin Xuan curiously and asked, "There were many soul formation cultivators among these Zerg warriors. How did you kill them with a single talisman array?" "Who told you that it was a talisman array?" Qin Xuan smiled. "It's a set of talisman arrays." Long before Qin Xuan appeared for the first time, he secretly set up the vast ocean talisman array, the improved 10-directional lightning prison, and the 5 elements rotation talisman array in the Emperor's palace. He only needed to use his spiritual energy to activate these talisman arrays, and they would erupt with full strength in an instant. At such a close distance, if a soul formation cultivator was not prepared, they would definitely die. This was also why Qin Xuan had the courage to appear and ask the black-robed man to bring him to the Emperor's palace. As long as the black-robed man was not in the Emperor's palace, he was confident that he could eliminate all the enemies in the Emperor's palace. "You killed these people, but do you think you can escape like this?" Otto looked at Qin Xuan and pointed at the seal on Qin Xuan's body. "Don't forget, you're still sealed. How do you plan to break the seal on your body?" When Qin Xuan heard this, he grinned and said to Aedo, "Then I'll invite you to watch my exciting performance again." Chapter 9:41. Hearing Qin Xuan's words, Otto's face could not help but show a touch of curiosity. He wanted to see what method Qin Xuan had to break the shackles left by the black-robed man. Just as Otto was thinking about this, a new guest suddenly appeared in the Emperor's palace. He was staggering as if he was drunk. He appeared to be very quiet, but in fact, he was quite ostentatious, as if he was afraid that others would not see him. Otto looked at the fist-sized golden beetle that suddenly appeared in the Emperor's palace and could not help but be stunned. Wasn't this the huge king of sacred armor that lured the black-robed man away? How could this guy suddenly appear here? How did you do it? Otto looked at Qin Xuan with amazement. You want to know how Qin Xuan lured the black-robed man away with the king of sacred armor and also made the king of sacred armor appear in the Emperor's palace? Were the black-robed man's subordinates all fools? Qin Xuan chuckled and said to Otto, "You don't have to worry about this. I won't tell you." In fact, Qin Xuan could make the little armored dragon appear in 2 places at the same time. It was not that Qin Xuan was powerful, but that the little armored dragon had a very special cloning technique. This was also something that Qin Xuan discovered when he was in the belly of the little armored dragon. The little armored dragon could release an illusion that was almost the same as the main body. As long as the main body and the illusion were not far away, the illusion could be freely switched. Qin Xuan was very fond of the magical ability of the little armored dragon, but unfortunately, this was the innate magical ability of the little armored dragon and could not be taught to others. Qin Xuan could only use it to lure the black-robed man away. Just as Qin Xuan was thinking about this, the little armored dragon had already opened its mouth and bit off all the shackles on Qin Xuan's body, helping Qin Xuan to smoothly regain his freedom. Otto saw that Qin Xuan had regained his freedom, and his face could not help but show a touch of coldness. He said in a deep voice, "Even if you get out now, it's useless. You can't leave Snow-Blowing City." "Haha, who said I was going to leave Snow-Blowing City?" Qin Xuan laughed and said to Otto, "Before I kill these Zerg, I won't leave Snow-Blowing City." Hearing Qin Xuan's words, Otto seemed to have heard a big joke. He could not help but laugh. He said to Qin Xuan very disdainfully, "Haha, you're really going to make me laugh. You want to kill them? Do you think you are a powerful cultivator at the late stage of Dongxi Realm? Or do you think you can become an overlord of the universe, just because you have the rune stone. Don't joke. Even though Qin Chuan had escaped from the hands of the black-robed man several times, it was only escaping. If Qin Chuan wanted to contend with the black-robed man, he was still a few hundred years away. Seeing that Otto did not believe him, Qin Chuan was too lazy to explain to Otto. He stretched his muscles and said to the little armored dragon, "You go back and continue to lure the Black Doe. Try to delay him as much as possible. If you encounter danger, retreat in time." The little armored dragon nodded, and his figure slowly became illusory, turning into a vague shadow. His body had already left and returned to Zerg's surveillance. As for Qin Chuan, what he had to do now was to rest and build up strength and adjust his physical condition to the peak as soon as possible. Whoosh! The Black Doe's figure cut through the sky and appeared among the Black Doe men like lightning. The moment he landed, he looked at the little armored dragon, who was a kilometer away. It really is the king of sacred armor. The moment he saw the little armored dragon, the Black Doe man determined that it was a king of sacred armor, and it was stronger than any other king of sacred armor he had seen before. Its vitality was astonishing. Looks like this is a primitive king of sacred armor. It has not recognized a master. When he realized that the little armored dragon was now in a masterless state, the Black Doe man's heart suddenly became a little hot. As long as he could obtain this king of sacred armor, he would definitely become a universe overlord in less than 100 years. Rune stones and whatnot were not worth mentioning compared to the value of this king of sacred armor. Emissary, something strange just happened. If you have anything to say it later. I want to subdue this king of sacred armor now. The black-robed man was not in the mood to listen to his subordinate's report. He was now focused on how to subdue the sacred armor king in front of him. Everything else could be delayed. Even if Qin Chuan broke free from the shackles now, he would not care. As he spoke, the black-robed man had already walked towards the little armored dragon. The little armored dragon immediately noticed the black-robed man's actions and subconsciously ran away. The black-robed man opened his mouth and let out a very strange cry at the little armored dragon. When the little armored dragon heard this sound, it looked back at the black-robed man with some confusion and couldn't help but stop moving. When the black-robed man saw this, a hint of joy appeared on his face. Just as he was about to approach the little armored dragon, the little armored dragon suddenly turned around and ran off into the distance. The black-robed man was stunned for a moment. He opened his mouth again and made the strange cry from before. The little armored dragon also stopped again. However, when the black-robed man approached the little armored dragon again, the little armored dragon would run off again. The Black Doe man looked at the little armored dragon with a dark expression and whispered, "Why is this king of sacred armor still afraid of me after hearing my sacred sound, and chose to run away when I approached?" The Black Doe man could not understand, but the little armored dragon was too lazy to think about it. In any case, when the Black Doe man approached it, it would run away. When the Black Doe man stopped, it would also stop. Although a distance of 1,000 meters was not far, it was enough for the little armored dragon to react when the Black Doe man suddenly attacked. When the Black Doe man tried again, the little armored dragon used its actions to tell the Black Doe man that the sacred sound would not work. It could not understand the sacred sound at all. "Emissary, we have lost contact with the Tianzi Palace." Just as the black-robed man was frowning and pondering over how to subdue the little armored dragon, his subordinate brought him a piece of bad news. Qin Chuan had escaped once again. "I know. Let him run. As long as our fleet outside does not retreat, he will not be able to escape from our grasp." The Black Doe man snorted. He was not in the mood to care about Qin Chuan. As long as he could get the king of sacred armor in front of him, it would not matter even if Qin Chuan escaped with the rune stone. He would definitely not do something like losing a watermelon after picking up a sesame seed. The black-robed man's thoughts could be said to coincide with Qin Chuan's. The more the black-robed man was obsessed with the little armored dragon, the safer Qin Chuan would be, and the faster he would recover. Once he fully recovered, it will be time for him to fight the black-robed man to the death. Chapter 942. 3 days. The black-robed man and the little armored dragon spent 3 whole days in the depths of the great snowy mountain. You chase and I run, you stop and I stop. The black-robed man was tortured by the little armored dragon to the point that he had no temper at all. Seeing that the black-robed man was already exhausted to the point that he lost his patience, when he approached the little armored dragon with the mentality of trying one last time, the little armored dragon did not respond at all, as if it did not intend to escape. When he saw that the little armored dragon did not continue to escape, the black-robed man's face could not help but reveal a hint of surprise. He approached the little armored dragon again, and after confirming that the little armored dragon would not continue to escape, he excitedly took a step forward and directly came to the little armored dragon's side. The little armored dragon looked at the black-robed man who was approaching it, and its large eyes revealed a touch of anthropomorphic confusion. Seeing this, the black-robed man very softly said to the little armored dragon, "Good baby, I am your future master. I will not hurt you." As he spoke, the black-robed man extended a hand towards the little armored dragon, indicating for the little armored dragon to come to his hand. The little armored dragon hesitated for a moment, then slowly climbed onto the black-robed man's palm. When the black-robed man saw the little armored dragon come to his palm, the smile on his face was as bright as the summer sun. He really never dreamed that he would be able to encounter such a good thing that could wake him up with a smile at night. "Phew, I finally caught you." The black-robed man looked at the little armored dragon lying on his palm and reached out his hand to gently stroke the little armored dragon's back. "From now on, your name will be Snow Mountain." Hearing the black-robed man give it a name, the little armored dragon frowned. It obviously did not like the name Snow Mountain, but when it thought that this was just a fake name, it did not care so much. Seeing that the little armored dragon did not show any obvious dissatisfaction, the black-robed man bit his finger and dripped a drop of blood on the little armored dragon's body. This drop of blood quickly merged into the little armored dragon's body and disappeared. At this moment, the black-robed man clearly felt that he had established some inexplicable connection with the little armored dragon. "It's done." The black-robed man cheered with extreme excitement. As long as he persisted in dripping a drop of blood essence on the little armored dragon every day, he would definitely be able to completely subdue the little armored dragon after 100 days. Just as the black-robed man was about to put the little armored dragon into his spirit beast pouch, the little armored dragon suddenly struggled violently. The connection that the black-robed man had established with the little armored dragon immediately showed signs of collapsing. The black-robed man turned pale with fright when he saw this and hurriedly put away the spirit beast pouch. Seeing that the little armored dragon had stopped struggling after the spirit beast pouch was kept, the black-robed man let out a long sigh of relief. If the little armored dragon were to develop a disgusted mentality towards him and escape again because of the spirit beast pouch, then the loss would outweigh the gain. Since you don't want to enter the spirit beast pouch, then follow me. This way, it will be easier for us to cultivate our relationship. As he spoke, the black-robed man raised his hand and placed the little armored dragon on his shoulder. The little armored dragon did not have any objections this time, and just lay down on the black-robed man's shoulder. The black-robed man chuckled when he saw this, and said, "Now that I have subdued the Snow Mountain, the next step is to find Qinchuan and take back the rune stone. Although the rune stone is not very useful to me now, it can still be used to exchange for some other treasures." Hearing the black-robed man mention Qinchuan, the little armored dragon gently lifted its eyelids and then began to sleep. When the black-robed man returned to the emperor's palace, full of satisfaction, he was greeted by a face that he loathed. That face was filled with a disdainful smile and was filled with ridicule. "What are you laughing at?" The black-robed man looked at Otto indifferently. Although the smile on Otto's face was annoying, he was in a good mood today and did not intend to be calculated with Otto. Hearing the black-robed man's words, Otto chuckled and replied, "I'm not laughing at anything. I just want to know how you plan to deal with Qinchuan." "Of course, I will kill him." The black-robed man snorted coldly. "Whether he hands over the runestone or not, I will kill him. Originally, the black-robed man hoped to use the power of the rune stone to become a universe overlord. However, now that he had a brand new king's sacred armor, he no longer needed the rune stone. Therefore, what he wanted to do most now was to cut Qin Xuan into 8 pieces to vent his anger. Hearing the black-robed man's words, Otto smiled and did not say anything. Just as he was about to close his eyes and rest, a strong force suddenly choked his throat. He opened his eyes subconsciously and looked at the black-robed man. "You don't think that I will keep you around forever, do you?" The black-robed man looked at Otto and said in a low voice, "Now that you are of no use to me, you can die in peace." Hearing the black-robed man's words, Otto laughed again. "I will wait for you in 9 remoteness." "Gotcha." The black-robed man simply crushed Otto's throat and casually threw Otto's body outside the Sun of Heaven Palace. Soon, someone came to take Otto's body away and dispose of it. "Humph! Who in the small not galaxy can kill me?" The black-robed man sneered. "When I establish a master-servant relationship with Snow Mountain, no one in the entire universe will be able to do anything to me." Hearing the black-robed man's arrogant declaration, the little armored dragon raised its eyelids slightly and yawned. Forget it. I will let it be arrogant for a while." The injuries on Qin Xuan's body were more serious than he had imagined. With the help of the true dragon's water, it took him a full 7 days to recover. This also made Qin Xuan deeply aware of the huge gap between him and the black-robed man. "I tried my best and still couldn't damage the corners of this guy's clothes, but this guy could put me in a state of near death with a casual blow." The gap between the apotheosis stage and the Dongshu stage is really huge. After sighing, Qin Xuan raised his eyes and looked in the direction of the Sun of Heaven Palace. Now that his injuries were all healed, it was time to settle the score with the black-robed man. I wonder how the little armor dragon's first undercover job is. I hope it doesn't reveal too many flaws and let the black-robed man find out, so he can beat him at his own game. Qin Xuan grinned. I hope the black-robed man will like the surprise I prepared for him. Whoosh! Qin Xuan's figure suddenly rushed into the sky and quickly arrived in the sky above the Sun of Heaven Palace. Before he could shout, the black-robed man's figure appeared in front of him. "Qin Xuan, you are really brave. I haven't gone to find you yet, but you have taken the initiative to jump out." Hearing the black-robed man's words, Qin Xuan smiled and replied, "Didn't you want the rune stone? Haven't I delivered myself to your doorstep?" The black-robed man laughed and said to Qin Xuan, "Kid, you are very sensible. Since that's the case, I will give you a quick death." Before his voice died away, the black-robed man's figure directly appeared in front of Qin Xuan. He raised his hand and punched. The simple movement contained endless power, as if it could destroy the world. Chapter 943. From the moment Qin Xuan appeared, he had been on guard against the black-robed man's attack. The moment the black-robed man attacked, he had already used the thunder escape to open up a distance and retreat into the distance. Zilala. The black-robed man shattered Qin Xuan's thunder substitution with a single punch. Then, he turned his gaze towards Qin Xuan, who was fleeing into the distance. He sneered, "You may have dodged my first attack, but can you dodge my second one?" Hearing the black-robed man's words, Qin Xuan grinned and said to the black-robed man, "If you don't attack, how do I know I can't dodge it?" Before Qin Xuan's voice fell, the black-robed man attacked again. Powerful spirit energy fluctuations surged towards Qin Xuan like a wave. Qin Xuan was like a sampan in the middle of a vast ocean, surrounded by waves in all directions. Just as the sampan was about to be smashed to pieces by the monstrous waves, the sampan suddenly turned into a giant steel ship, brazenly withstanding the pressure of the storm. Roar! Qin Xuan, who had transformed into a blue thunder dragon, roared towards the sky. He opened his mouth and spat out several balls of dragon breath at the black-robed man. However, although the dragon breath was hot, the black-robed man was not afraid at all. He raised his hand, and the dragon breath dissipated into nothingness. It's really a good ability but unfortunately you're not very good at it. The black-robed man looked at Qin Chuan with a regretful gaze. He was not feeling sorry for Qin Chuan, but for Qin Chuan's dragon ability. After Qin Chuan died, who knew how many years it would take for another person to learn the dragon ability? Qin Chuan did not care about this. He opened his mouth and spat out dragon breath at the black-robed man. In the blink of an eye, dozens of balls of dragon breath rushed towards the black-robed man, covering the sky. At the same time, it also blocked the black-robed man's view of Qin Chuan. Blocking my view? Are you trying to escape again? The black-robed man looked at the dragon breath in the sky and frowned slightly. He raised his hand again and dissipated the dragon breath. He said coldly, "If I let you escape this time, how can I continue to live in this world?" As he spoke, the black-robed man raised his hand and made a grasping motion towards Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan immediately felt that he lost control of his body, and his entire body was completely under the black-robed man's control. Law of Space. The black-robed man used the law of space against Qin Chuan again, and it was even stronger than the last time. Don't you have something that's very powerful and can break through my space laws? You can take it out and try it again. The black-robed man snorted coldly. If you can break through my law of space this time, I'll leave you with an intact corpse. Hearing the black-robed man's words, Qin Chuan no longer hesitated and directly activated the dragon pearl that he had prepared beforehand. Buzz! The dragon ball flew out of Qin Chuan's body and released a soft golden light in the air. The black-robed man finally saw clearly what Qin Chuan had used to hurt him last time. What is this? Although the black-robed man was experienced and knowledgeable, it was his first time seeing the Dragon Ball. Although he felt that it looked familiar, he could not remember where he had seen it before. Last time, he was caught off guard by the Dragon Ball's sneak attack. This time, he was prepared. The moment the Dragon Ball appeared, a translucent shield appeared in front of him. I don't believe that this thing can break my space shield. Facing the black-robed man's defense, the Dragon Ball, under the control of Qin Chuan's thoughts, directly displayed the first transformation of the Dragon Ball's 9 transformations, Heavenly Light. When a heavenly light rushed towards the space shield seemed to have no resistance and was easily destroyed. However, no matter what, the power of the heavenly light was unable to reach the black-robed man. It was as if it had entered a maze, going around in circles without finding a way out. Ha! My space shield contains countless spaces. No matter how strong your attack is, as long as you can't break all the spaces in the space shield, then don't even think about hurting me. The black-robed man saw that Qin Chuan's attack was ineffective and immediately showed an extremely proud smile on his face. You should be proud that you were able to force me to use the space shield, so you can die in peace. As he spoke, the black-robed man suddenly increased the pressure of the law of space on Qin Chuan, as if he wanted to pinch Qin Chuan into a ball of meat, causing Qin Chuan's body to emit an unbearable sound. Seeing that Qin Chuan's body was about to collapse, the Dragon Ball suspended in the air suddenly bloomed with a silver-white brilliance. Whoosh! This silver-white brilliance was like a sharp sword that pierced straight into the space shield in front of the black-robed man. Almost instantly, the space shield was shattered, and then it pierced through the black-robed man's body, breaking his defense. How is this possible? The black-robed man's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets as he let out an angry roar. His space shield was broken. Cough, cough, cough. The moment the black-robed man was attacked, the law of space that enveloped Qin Chuan suddenly dissipated, and Qin Chuan was able to escape. He gasped for breath, and his face was filled with the joy of surviving a disaster. I was almost killed by you. Qin Chuan looked at the black-robed man and gasped for breath. Maybe the heavenly light can't cause you any harm, but the sky sword can. The second transformation of the Dragon Ball's 9 transformations, Sky Sword. Hearing Qin Chuan's words, the black-robed man couldn't help but be slightly stunned and said in disbelief, "Did you just say Dragon Ball? This thing is Dragon Ball. How is this possible? Dragon Ball is a legendary artifact." Before the black-robed man could finish his words, he suddenly felt an intense pain coming from his wound, as if something was tearing at him. The black-robed man lowered his head and looked at his chest. When he saw the golden figure that was trying its best to drill into his body, his face couldn't help but reveal a look of shock, and he cried out involuntarily, "Snow Mountain, what are you doing?" "Ah!" The black-robed man once again let out a painful cry. The little armored dragon had completely drilled into his body and was crazily devouring his internal organs. Qin Xuan saw this scene in the distance and couldn't help but sigh. "I used all my strength to use the second transformation of the 9 transformations of the Dragon Ball to barely break through your body's defense. But the little armored dragon can easily devour your internal organs. This little thing's teeth are really powerful." Hearing Qin Xuan's words, the black-robed man finally realized that all this was a trap for him. The little armored dragon was not subdued by him at all. It was a mole arranged by Qin Xuan. "It turns out that the person I met in Sinai City was you." The black-robed man remembered that he had sensed the king of sacred armor when he was in Sinai City, but now it was completely meaningless for him to think about it, because it was too late for him to regret. "But even if I die, I won't let you have it easy." The black-robed man looked at Qin Xuan, and a fierce look flashed in his eyes. His body suddenly swelled up, and he was actually going to self-destruct. Chapter 944. Oh no! Seeing that the black-robed man was about to explode, Qin Xuan's expression changed immediately. He immediately withdrew the Dragon Ball and flew into the distance. At this time, the little armored dragon, which was in the black-robed man's body, returned to Qin Xuan's side through the shadow, shifting technique, and quickly entered Qin Xuan's brain to hide. Qin Xuan's flying speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he had flown more than 10,000 meters away. However, the power of the black-robed man's self-explosion was even more exaggerated. In the blink of an eye, it was behind Qin Xuan and completely enveloped Qin Xuan. Just as Qin Xuan felt that his body was about to melt in this self-explosion, a purple light suddenly gushed out from his brain and wrapped around his body, saving him from the disaster. This is the power of the rune stone. The rune sword used the power of the rune stone to protect me. Qin Xuan looked at the purple light beside him, and his eyes flashed with a touch of relief. Fortunately, the rune sword had acted in time. Otherwise, he would have been dead by now. Just as Qin Xuan was rejoicing that he had survived, a cry of disbelief suddenly came from afar. "How is this possible? You didn't die?" The soul of the black-robed man looked at Qin Xuan, who was covered in purple light, in disbelief. "It was the power of the rune stone that protected you." The black-robed man seemed to have thought of something and immediately wanted to escape. However, at this moment, a golden sword suddenly appeared in front of him and mercilessly tore his soul apart. "No, this is impossible." The black-robed man let out an extremely shrill scream. "This can't be real." In this incomparably desperate scream, the black-robed man's aura completely disappeared from this world, and his soul was destroyed. At the same time, the storm caused by the black-robed man's self-explosion had also passed, and the devastated land was presented to the world. Qin Xuan looked at the crater that had a radius of 1,000 miles, and he couldn't help but feel a little scared. He really didn't think that the Dongshu stage cultivator who was forced into a corner would have the ultimate move of self-detonating his body. He had to be careful in the future. The black-robed man's self-destruction actually destroyed more than half of the Blizzard Palace. There isn't a single living person inside. This saved me the trouble of finding his subordinates. As for those in outer space, it shouldn't be difficult to deal with them. Qin Xuan glanced around and muttered in a low voice, "The black-robed man just said that the Dragon Balls are divine artifacts." Qin Xuan looked at the Dragon Ball in his hand, and a trace of doubt flashed through his eyes. Although the Dragon Ball did have a very strong power, Qin Xuan always felt that it was not related to a divine weapon. At most, it could be regarded as a low-grade holy weapon. If it was a divine weapon, Qin Xuan felt that the rune sword was more like a divine weapon. Maybe the power of the Dragon Ball has not fully recovered, Or maybe it is because I'm still too weak to fully exert the power of the Dragon Ball. Anyway, it is better not to use the Dragon Ball in the future. Once this news leaks out, I am afraid that the overlords of the universe will be looking for me everywhere. In Qinchuan's opinion, although the Dragon Ball was only at the level of a holy weapon, even if it was only a low-grade holy weapon, it was a rare treasure in the universe. It was enough to make countless powerful cultivators of the Dongshu stage and even the overlords of the universe fight and set off a bloody storm. After putting away the Dragon Ball, Qinchuan focused his attention on the little armored dragon and the rune sword in his brain. The little armored dragon ran fast enough, so it did not suffer any injuries. Not only that, the little armored dragon seemed to have gained a lot of benefits from devouring the internal organs of the black-robed man. At this time, it was lying on a monster core and sleeping, digesting the huge amount of energy in its body. As for the rune sword, compared to before, the scars on the sword seemed to be less, but not by much. There was no obvious improvement. The rune stone had completely disappeared. It should have been completely absorbed by the rune sword. Rune sword, how do you feel now? Hearing Qinchuan's question, the rune sword hummed softly and transmitted its thoughts to Qinchuan. After receiving the rune sword's response, Qinchuan smiled bitterly and sighed somewhat helplessly. Originally, if the rune sword had completely absorbed the power of the rune stone, it should have been able to repair about 10% of the sword's injuries. But previously, in order to protect him from being killed by the black-robed man's self-explosion, the rune sword had used a part of the rune stone's power to protect him. As a result, the rune sword could only absorb a small amount of the rune stone's power from the rune stone, barely repairing less than 10% of the sword's injuries. It only achieved half of the expected effect. Faced with this helpless reality, Qinchuan felt a slight headache as he said, "I fought so hard to obtain this thumb-sized talisman stone, and it can only heal 10% of the damage on your sword. In other words, I'll have to find at least 9 more talisman stones for you in the future. Isn't this too terrifying?" It was because of this rune stone that Odysseus and the black-robed man, 2 mid-Dongshu stage cultivators, died. Angel, an early Dongshu stage cultivator, also died. Thousands of divine transformation stage cultivators were killed or injured. Countless ordinary people died. The Sinai Galaxy was almost in trouble, and this was under the condition that the news had not spread out. If the news had spread out, who knew how many people would have died? Just thinking about it made Qinchuan feel incomparably terrified. Thinking of this, Qinchuan curiously asked the rune sword, "How much of your injuries can the power of Tao repair?" The rune sword hummed softly in response, 1%. Qinchuan couldn't help but feel a headache after receiving this response. The power of 1 Tao rune could only repair 1% of the rune sword's injuries. In other words, if he wanted to repair the rune sword with the power of Tao runes, he would have to find at least 90 Tao runes. In the entire Tron Nebula, there are only 3 Tao runes. This is equivalent to having me find all the Tao runes in an entire star cluster. Qinchuan sighed deeply. The road ahead is long. I will have to search for Tao runes and rune stones from top to bottom. This is too difficult. However, Qinchuan was only lamenting about how difficult it was. The rune sword had saved his lifetime and time again in the past. It had even opened up the path of cultivation for him. It was no exaggeration to say that without the rune sword, he would not be where he was today. In order to repay the rune sword, he would not hesitate to spend his entire life searching for Tao runes and rune stones. Don't worry. No matter how difficult this path is, I will resolutely walk down it. Qinchuan solemnly made a promise to the rune sword. "Old friend, let's walk down this path together. Walk to the end." Hearing Qinchuan's words, the rune sword hummed again, expressing its gratitude to Qinchuan. The friendship between man and sword was deeply rooted from then on. Chapter 945. For many people, Sinai City had not been peaceful recently. The city was in turmoil. First, during the Talisman Formation Master Exchange Conference, The Insect King was still sealed in the sky above Sinai City. Like the sword of Damocles, the Insect King could fall at any time. In a place unknown to the public, Qin Xuan and Zerg had a battle of wits and courage. In the end, Zerg won by a narrow margin. In the royal palace, Ao Feng and Zhao Deng sat opposite each other. The two of them looked at each other with surprise and worry. You've heard about it too, haven't you? An extremely terrifying explosion broke out in the Snow Palace. Not only did it create a crater with a radius of 1,000 miles, but also spread to thousands of miles away, almost covering half of the snow star. Of course I've heard about it. It's also because I heard about it that I came to find you. I think this matter must have something to do with Qin Xuan. Ao Feng could not help but sigh when he mentioned Qin Xuan. He said to Zhao Deng, "Now I don't want to think about the rune stone anymore. I only hope that Qin Xuan can return safely. Compared to those worldly possessions, I think our friendship with Qin Xuan is more important." In the past, Ao Feng had always thought that cultivation resources were the most important thing in the cultivation world. However, after experiencing the recent series of events, he felt that he was wrong. Sincere feelings were the most precious thing in the world. First Prince is right. Our friendship with Qin Xuan is the most important thing. If it weren't for Qin Xuan, we might have died in Zerg's hands. Zhao Deng sighed and said to Ao Feng, "I wonder if Qin Xuan is still alive." Just as Ao Feng and Zhao Deng were worrying about Qin Xuan's life, the voice of a guard came from outside the door. "First Prince, there is someone outside the royal palace. He calls himself Qin Xuan." Ao Feng and Zhao Deng were pleasantly surprised when they heard the guard's words. They quickly got up and walked outside. They quickly arrived at the gate of the imperial city. When they saw Qin Xuan standing at the gate with a smile, they cheered excitedly. "Qin Xuan, you're not dead." Hearing Ao Feng's words, Qin Xuan chuckled and said to Ao Feng, "Can I understand that you're looking forward to my death?" No. I've never thought about that." Ao Feng stepped forward and hugged Qin Xuan enthusiastically. "Brother, welcome back." After Ao Feng and Qin Xuan hugged, Zhao Deng also stepped forward and hugged Qin Xuan. He smiled and said, "This is definitely the happiest day of my life. Thank you for thinking about me." Qin Xuan smiled and then said with some regret, "But I couldn't bring that thing back. I'm really sorry." Hearing Qin Xuan's words, Ao Feng shook his head and said to Qin Xuan, "Nothing is more important than you coming back alive. Let's go back and talk. You must tell us in detail how you fought against those enemies." Qin Xuan and the other two returned to the hall. Under the expectant gaze of Ao Feng and Zhao Deng, Qin Xuan briefly described the battle between him and the black-robed man. He made some changes in some places, such as the small armor dragon, the runic sword, and the runic stone. In the end, the black-robed man chose to self-destruct in order to kill me. I had no choice but to activate the runic stone to protect myself. Later on, in order to kill the black-robed man, I used up the last bit of the runic stone's power. Qin Xuan sighed. "If not for the runic stone, I would be a dead man now." Hearing Qin Xuan's narration, Ao Feng and Zhao Deng's faces showed a trace of fear. If they were to switch roles with Qin Xuan, they would definitely not be able to do better than Qin Xuan. "It's a good thing that the runic stone is gone." Ao Feng sighed and said, "At least we don't have to worry about anything anymore." "That's true." Zhao Deng nodded. "Treasures of that level are not only useless to us, but will also be a death sentence. Just like that black-robed man, a mighty cultivator fell because of him and our great emperor." When Qin Xuan heard this, he smiled and said to the two of them, "You believe me just like that? Aren't you afraid that I'll hide the runic stone and make up a story to deceive you?" Ao Feng chuckled and said to Qin Xuan, "We are friends, and our lives were saved by you. If we don't even have this basic trust in you, then our friendship is too cheap." Zhao Deng also nodded in agreement. They had already doubted Qin Xuan once, so they definitely wouldn't doubt him a second time. "Although you are willing to believe me, there are some things that I still have to say." Qin Xuan's expression became solemn. "I, Qin Xuan, swear to the heavens that the runic stone's power has been used up in the battle between me and the black-robed man. If this is false, I am willing to immediately have my cultivation crippled and sink into the depths of hell forever. Hearing Qinchuan's oath, Ao Feng and Zhao Deng's expressions also became serious. They didn't expect that Qinchuan would use such an extreme method to prove it to them. No, no, no. Ao Feng looked at Qinchuan with a complicated expression. Why bother? Qinchuan chuckled and said to Ao Feng and Zhao Deng, I really treat you as friends, so I don't want any grudges or doubts between us. Anyway, as long as I'm not lying, this oath won't have any effect on me, so there's no need to care about it. Brother Qin is a true hero. Zhao Deng looked at Qinchuan with admiration. I admire you. When Qinchuan saw Ao Feng and Zhao Deng's expressions, he knew that his oath wasn't in vain. It could be considered that he'd completely abandoned the hostility between the three of them, causing their friendship to become even more solid. If it wasn't for this, it wouldn't be appropriate for him to raise his following request. Will the Talisman Formation Master Exchange continue after this incident? Qinchuan asked curiously. The competition probably hasn't ended, right? Ao Feng laughed indifferently when he heard this. The calamity of insects broke out that day, and the square was a disaster area. More than half of the 100 participating Talisman Formation Masters died. So how could the competition continue? When he heard Ao Feng's answer, Qinchuan asked, since it's like that, then what about the quota to comprehend Dao markings? The Talisman Formation Master Exchange was originally held by our imperial family. Now that it can't continue, the quota is naturally still in the hands of the imperial family. Ao Feng gazed at Qinchuan and said, Right, I remember that Brother Qin is one of the participants as well. What? Are you interested in this quota? Qinchuan nodded and said, Indeed, I really want a quota. I wonder what price I have to pay. Ao Feng roared with laughter when he heard this, and then he said to Qinchuan, There's no need for you to pay any price. If you want it, I'll give it to you. I'll even give it all to you. Chapter 946. Qinchuan had returned to Sinai City for a spot. Now that Ao Feng had agreed to give him a spot, he let out a long sigh of relief. In that case, I have to thank you. Qinchuan chuckled. I've been coveting this spot for a long time. Ao Feng laughed and said straightforwardly, There's no need to be so courteous between us brothers. You're the only 5th-tier formation master participating in the Talisman Formation Master Exchange Conference. No one will dare to say anything if I give you a spot. To Ao Feng, a spot to comprehend Dao runes wasn't something precious. Since Qinchuan wanted it, he would give it to Qinchuan. It wasn't a big deal at all, right? I have one more thing to ask of you. Qinchuan looked at Ao Feng. I hope Brother Ao can help me arrange for the Heath City's Talisman Formation Master Association to be one of the top 10 Talisman Formation Master Associations. You don't need to say anything. I've already done it for you. Ao Feng smiled at Qinchuan and said, I know about your relationship with President Zhua. I've already taken care of this matter since the first day I returned to Sinai City. Don't worry. As long as I'm still alive and control the imperial family, the Heath City's Talisman Formation Master Association will always be one of the top 10 Talisman Formation Masters. Hearing Ao Feng's words, Qinchuan immediately took out a bottle of fine wine from his storage ring and said to Ao Feng, The words of thanks are in the wine. I'll drink first. After resolving the matter with Zhuasisi and the Rose City, Qinchuan could prepare to head to Tron Nebula to comprehend Dao runes without worry. With Ao Feng's help, he could save a lot of effort. It was a good thing. Qinchuan and the other two drank in the Imperial City until midnight. Qinchuan was finally able to leave and return to the Rose Hotel. What Qinchuan didn't expect was that the first thing he saw upon returning to the hotel was Tu Shanling, Brother Qin. Long time no see. Looking at Qinchuan, Tu Shanling praised. That day, I saw Brother Qin not fearing the Insect King at all. Brother Qin, you sealed the Insect King with your sound, sealing magic, and saved the world. I am so proud to have a friend like you. Qinchuan looked at Tu Shanling curiously and asked, How did you know I was back? I don't know when Brother Qin returned. I've been waiting here all this time. Finally, Brother Qin returned. Tu Shanling looked at Qin Xuan and said seriously, Brother Qin, I wonder if you have any intention of starting a long-term cooperation with our Tu Shan family. Hearing Tu Shanling's words, Qin Xuan was slightly stunned. He asked in surprise, cooperation? Not joining? Before, we hoped that Brother Qin could join our Tu Shan family and become one of us. However, after this insect disaster, we realized that Brother Qin, you're not an ordinary person. Sooner or later, you'll become a dragon. Therefore, we changed our minds. We hope that we can reach a long-term cooperation. Looking at Qin Xuan, Tu Shanling said sincerely, this time, I came with the sincerity of our Tu Shan family. We won't let Brother Qin down. Qin Xuan glanced at Tu Shanling in a complicated way, then said to him, let's go back to the room and talk. Back in the room, Qin Xuan said to Tu Shanling, Brother Ling, tell me, how do we want to cooperate? Before we talk about cooperation, we need to confirm one thing first. Brother Qin, do you have the ability to help people go through the divine punishment with your thunder power? Tu Shanling said seriously, this is the basis of our cooperation. Hearing Tu Shanling, Qin Xuan pondered for a short while, then said to Tu Shanling, to be honest, I'm not sure either because I only use the power of the thunder power to defuse the divine punishment when I go through the divine punishment myself. I've never helped anyone else with this power. Long ago, Qin Xuan had guessed that Tu Shan family came to him for this special power of his. Since Tu Shanling didn't try to hide it anymore, Qin Xuan decided to tell him the truth. He didn't have any experience in helping people go through the divine punishment, so he couldn't be sure if it would work. Hearing Qin Xuan's answer, Tu Shanling chuckled and said to Qin Xuan, we've anticipated this as well. So, we need to do an experiment. If the experiment works, we can start cooperation. Hearing this, Qin Xuan asked curiously, what's the cooperation about? Tu Shanling replied, as long as you help a cultivator above the spirit-severing stage of the Tu Shan family go through a divine punishment or a minor tribulation, you can get a chance to study the Tao runes for a month. You can choose any of the 3 Tao runes of Tron Nebula. Hearing this, Qin Xuan's heart skipped a beat. He asked, what else? Of course, the Tu Shan family will also provide you with shelter and some resources for your daily cultivation. Brother Qin, you don't have to do anything else for the Tu Shan family. You have absolute freedom. Speaking of this, Tu Shanling paused for a moment, then continued. But in this way, Brother Qin, you can't help people from other forces. Of course, you can help your friends and family without any problem. After hearing Tu Shanling's condition, Qin Xuan asked, can you change the first condition? Hearing this, Tu Shanling looked at Qin Xuan with surprise and asked, Brother Qin, don't you want to study the Tao runes? Qin Xuan took a deep look at Tu Shanling and answered, compared to studying the Tao runes, I prefer studying rune formations. I hope that every time I help a spirit-severing cultivator of the Tu Shan family go through a minor tribulation or a divine punishment, you can provide me with a level 5 rune formation. If it were before, the conditions for studying the Tao runes might be tempting to Qin Xuan. But now, Qin Xuan had no interest in studying the Tao runes at all. Tao runes were like rune stones. Once they were absorbed by rune swords, they would lose their power and could no longer be studied. If he wanted to continue studying the Tao runes, he would have to wait for thousands of years before the Tao runes could produce power again. Hearing this, Tu Shanling frowned slightly and said to Qin Xuan, I need to talk to the elder about this. I can't give you an answer right away. Tu Shanling didn't expect that Qin Xuan would put forward such a condition. Qin Xuan, who had become a level 5 rune formation master at such a young age, didn't want to study the Tao runes. This was unexpected. Of course, I'll stay in Sinai City for one more day. You can go back and ask the 7th elder first. Qin Xuan chuckled and said to Tu Shanling, I still say the same thing. If I want to cooperate with you, I'll give priority to your Tu Shan family. Hearing this, Tu Shanling stood up and said to Qin Xuan, in this case, I'll take my leave. I'll visit you tomorrow morning. I'll see you out. Qin Chuan stood up and walked Tu Shanling to the door of the hotel. He watched Tu Shanling leave on the shuttle, hoping that Tu Shanling would bring him good news tomorrow morning. Chapter 9:47. The next morning, Tu Shanling arrived as promised and brought Qin Chuan a piece of good news. The Tu Shan clan was willing to change their conditions and provide Qin Chuan with a level 5 talisman array, as long as Qin Chuan helped a divine transformation stage cultivator of the Tu Shan clan overcome a heavenly tribulation or minor tribulation. He would be able to obtain the level 5 talisman array provided by the Tu Shan clan. If Qin Chuan wanted a battle array, he would have to use up 3 chances. Most importantly, both the auxiliary array and the battle array would be provided randomly. Qin Chuan could not choose by himself. Qin Chuan only briefly considered the new condition of the Tu Shan clan before agreeing. With his current situation, it was already very good to be able to obtain such a condition. If he continued to bargain with the Tu Shan clan, he would be ungrateful. After finalizing some details, Qin Chuan and Tu Shanling agreed to visit the Tu Shan clan as a guest after going to Tron Nebula to comprehend the Tao runes. They would conduct experiments before the cooperation. After sending off the satisfied Tu Shanling, Qin Chuan immediately set off for Rose City. He was prepared to solve some of Lu Zi's worries before leaving. When Qin Chuan arrived at Rose City, it was already 2 days later. Angel's death did not cause too much of an impact on the daily operations of Rose City. However, Lu Zi, who had become the new Grand Duke, was being discussed by many people. Qin Chuan did not walk into the Grand Duke's mansion openly. Instead, he snuck in. However, what made Qin Chuan feel very awkward was that he was discovered by the Grand Duke's mansion's alarm system. Alert! Alert! Intruder discovered. Coordinates B142. Alert! Alert! Intruder discovered. Coordinates B142. Qin Chuan could not help but reveal a look of astonishment when he heard the ear-piercing alarm. He did not expect to be discovered as soon as he entered the Grand Duke's mansion. Whoosh! Just as Qin Chuan was thinking about this, dozens of figures suddenly appeared around him and surrounded him. Who are you? Why are you trespassing into the Grand Duke's mansion? The leader looked at Qin Chuan with vigilance. It seemed like he was going to attack Qin Chuan at any moment. Qin Chuan immediately raised his hand and replied, "Don't attack me. I'm a good person. I know your new Grand Duke and Sophie." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, the man asked suspiciously, "You know Officer Sophie?" Qin Chuan nodded. "That's right, it's Sophie." Qin Chuan laughed out loud after Sophie's words exposed his thoughts. He said, No. I just felt that it was too troublesome to go through the main entrance and register, so I came in directly." Sophie smiled and said to Qin Chuan, "It's normal for you to have such worries. I don't have any opinions, nor do I have the right to give any opinions. Let's go. I'll take you to see the Grand Duke." Qin Chuan followed Sophie into the depths of the Grand Duke's mansion. He asked Sophie curiously, "Did the Grand Duke's mansion have such an excellent alarm system in the past?" Sophie shook her head and explained, "This is the latest alarm system developed by Tron Nebula's Unju group. It was bought and installed a few days ago. You're the first person to be caught by this alarm system." Qin Chuan smiled awkwardly. He asked, "What's the highest realm this alarm system can catch?" "The early stage of the Dongshu realm," Sophie replied. "Even if we were to be caught by the alarm system, we wouldn't be able to defend against a middle Dongshu realm cultivator. That's why we didn't consider the more powerful version." Qin Chuan raised his eyebrows at Sophie's words. He asked, "So you're saying that you have a way to defend against an early Dongshu realm cultivator?" Sophie nodded and said to Qin Chuan, "That's right. When we bought this alarm system, we also bought a defense system. It's installed in the Grand Duke's office. This defense system has the functions of defense, counterattack, and self-repair. It's enough to defend against an early Dongshu realm cultivator's attack. Unfortunately, this defense system is a one-time use item. It will lose its effect after one use." Qin Chuan chuckled and asked, "These two systems must have cost a lot of money, right?" Sophie nodded and replied, These two systems cost the Grand Duke's mansion nearly 200 years of tax revenue. The cost is indeed not small, but to protect the Grand Duke's safety, it's all worth it. You're very thoughtful. Qin Chuan grinned and said to Sophie, "You've worked hard. This is what we should do." Sophie smiled and stopped in front of a large door. She said to Qin Chuan, "This is the Grand Duke's office. You can go in. I won't disturb you." Qin Chuan stepped forward and pushed open the door. He walked inside. After passing through a corridor that wasn't too long, he finally saw Lu Zi, whom he hadn't seen for a long time. At this moment, LVZ was wearing a purple dress with a black top hat on her head. She had an outstanding temperament and had the dignified aura of someone in a high position. She sat in front of the table and was meticulously handling official business. Her expression was somewhat solemn. "Put the new official business on the left side of the desk. Prepare a steak for me for lunch. Add a piece of rock sugar to my coffee. Also, what happened to the alarm system just now? Did someone hack into it, or is there a problem with the system?" Qin Chuan couldn't help but laugh when he saw Lu Zi say these words without even raising her head. He teased, "Grand Duke, who are you talking to?" Hearing Qin Chuan's familiar voice, Lu Zi immediately raised her head and looked at Qin Chuan. A hint of pleasant surprise appeared on her charming face. She said to Qin Chuan, "You're back?" As she spoke, Lu Zi's figure flashed and appeared in front of Qin Chuan. She suddenly threw herself into Qin Chuan's arms. Qin Chuan hugged Lu Zi and said with a smile, "It's only been a few days since we last met, but you're already a soul formation cultivator. Congratulations. I've been working very hard." Lu Zi looked up at Qin Chuan with a smile in her eyes. "Although I know I'm still a long way from catching up to you, at least I can see you're back. Your efforts haven't been in vain." Qin Chuan gently stroked Lu Zi's hair and said in a low voice, "But you have to pay attention to the balance between work and rest. Don't tire yourself out." "Qin Chuan, there's something I have to talk to you about." Lu Zi looked at Qin Chuan with a serious expression. Just as she was about to continue speaking, Qin Chuan raised his hand and covered her red lips. "Let a man like me confess." Qin Chuan looked at Lu Zi with a gentle gaze and said softly, "I like you. Be my girlfriend." Chapter 948. As the saying goes, people are in high spirits when faced with happy events. After clarifying his and LVZ's feelings, Qin Chuan had been very happy recently. However, after receiving the news from AO Feng, Qin Chuan immediately sorted out his mood and embarked on his journey to the center of the Telung Nebula, Telung capital. In the spaceship, Qin Chuan and AO Feng sat opposite each other in the hall, listening carefully to AO Feng's explanation about comprehending Dao runes. This time, there will be a total of more than 300 talisman array geniuses studying Dao runes together. You can choose from 2 Dao runes, one with the wind attribute and the other with the wood attribute. Which one are you going to choose? AO Feng looked at Qin Chuan. "Actually, I suggest that you choose the wind attribute. The main purpose of comprehending the Dao rune is to learn the battle array. The offensive power of a wind attribute battle array is stronger than that of a wood attribute battle array. However, the choice is still up to you." Qin Chuan chuckled and said to AO Feng, "To be honest, I don't think I can comprehend a Dao rune in a short month. Therefore, I plan to use this month to travel to both ends and take a look at both Dao runes. Then, I will choose the Dao rune that is most suitable for me and wait until I have the chance to comprehend it. What do you think?" AO Feng wasn't surprised to hear Qin Chuan's words, because many people in the past would make the same choice as Qin Chuan. They would travel to both ends and take a look at both Dao runes. Just like what Qin Chuan said, there had never been a person in this world who could comprehend Dao runes in a month. Of course, there's no problem. I think it's a good thing to comprehend Dao runes with a normal mindset. If you start with the mindset of comprehending Dao runes in a month, it won't be a good thing. You're too eager for quick success. AO Feng chuckled and said to Qin Chuan, "I think you have a high probability of comprehending Dao runes, but I estimate that it will take at least a few decades. 1 month is not realistic." Although Ao Feng had always felt that Qin Chuan was a genius with peerless talent, some things still depended on the actual situation. The journey from the Sinai galaxy to Terang City required them to cross 4 galaxies in the universe. Even with the interstellar portal, it would still take at least half a month. Other than chatting with Ao Feng at the beginning of the journey, Qin Chuan spent most of his time cultivating in his bedroom. It was not until half a month later that the spaceship finally arrived at Terang City that Qin Chuan came out of his bedroom. "We've arrived at our destination." Otto stood in front of the porthole, pointed at the outside world, and said to Qin Chuan, "This is the political, economic, and cultural center of Tron Nebula, Terang capital." Qin Chuan walked to the porthole and looked out. When he saw the huge steel building, he couldn't help but be shocked. "This is Tran's capital." Ao Feng nodded and said to Qin Chuan, "Don't be surprised, this is Tran's capital." Hearing Ao Feng's answer, Qin Chuan's eyes flashed with surprise. He really didn't expect Tran's capital to be such a huge steel castle. At a glance, he couldn't see the end of it. Seeing Qin Chuan's surprised expression, Ao Feng chuckled and said to Qin Chuan, "Actually, everyone is very surprised when they see Tran's capital for the first time. You're already relatively calm. Tron City does not exist on a certain planet, because it itself is built from countless man-made steel planets. The total area of Tron City is almost 1/3 the size of the same galaxy, and the population is more than 100 billion. It is a real metropolis of the universe." Hearing Ao Feng's introduction, Qin Chuan exclaimed, "This is the first time I've seen a city like this. No, this can't be described as a city anymore. This is a steel kingdom. We're about to land. I'll take you to see the scenery of Tran's capital later." Ao Feng smiled and reached out to pat Qin Chuan's shoulder. "Don't be dazzled." When the spaceship slowly landed at the starport, Qin Chuan and Ao Feng left the spaceship and set foot on the land of Tran's capital. Ao Feng and Qin Chuan were both ordinary citizens here, so no one paid special attention to them. Instead, Qin Chuan was very curious about the tourists in the starport. When Qin Chuan was in the Sinai galaxy, most of the people he saw were humanoids who looked similar to himself. But here, Qin Chuan saw all kinds of strange people. There were 3-meter-tall giants covered in green hair, conjoined people with 2 heads and 4 arms, and there were also strange people without heads whose eyes grew directly on their chests. Ao Feng noticed Qin Chuan's gaze on those people. He chuckled and said to Qin Chuan, "That's the green-haired race. His hair is all hair, so he has a very strong defense. The one with 2 heads and 4 arms is the twin race. Everyone in the twin race has 2 minds. It's a very special race. As for the one without a head, this is the first time I've seen it. I guess it's the faceless race." Hearing Ao Feng's introduction, Qin Chuan said with some emotion, "This is the first time I've seen so many races in the universe. This is nothing. When we enter the center of Tran's capital, you'll see even more races." Ao Feng smiled and said to Qin Chuan, "Let's go, we'll walk around." Qin Chuan followed behind Ao Feng like a tourist following a tour guide. He was full of curiosity about everything around him. Although Tran's capital was made of steel, it didn't give off a cold feeling. On the spaceship, Ao Feng and Qin Chuan stood in front of the window and pointed to a huge building outside. This is the most famous Unju group in Tran's capital. It's responsible for the research and development of security systems and also the rental of security personnel. It's said that the top security personnel of the Unju group are at the middle stage of the Dongxi realm. Hearing Ao Feng's words, Qin Chuan couldn't help but stare blankly. He didn't expect that the building in front of him was the headquarters of the Unju group. What's more, the Unju group could provide middle-stage Dongxi realm cultivators as security personnel. Middle-stage Dongxi realm cultivators could run amok in the same galaxy. But in Tran's capital, they were just security personnel. Seeing the surprised look on Qin Chuan's face, Ao Feng chuckled and said, "You don't have to be too surprised. Although the Unju group has security guards at the middle stage of the Dongxi realm, it's still expensive to hire them. Thousands of years have passed since the establishment of the Unju group, and only 2 or 3 people can afford to hire security guards at the middle stage of the Dongshu realm. So, this is basically just a gimmick. Chapter 949. After hearing A.O. Feng's explanation, Qin Xuan had a look of understanding on his face. Indeed, it was almost impossible to hire a middle-stage Dongshu cultivator as a bodyguard without paying a huge amount of money. However, for Qin Xuan, money was just a worldly possession. If there was a chance, he would like to hire a middle-stage Dongshu cultivator to be Lu Zi's bodyguard. A.O. Deng smiled and said to Qin Xuan, "These are just along the way. Today, I'm going to take you to see a big event." When Qin Xuan heard this, he asked curiously, "What grand occasion?" A.O. Feng coughed and said to Qin Xuan, "It's the Trump City Super Auction that even I have only attended a few times." The so-called Trump City Super Auction was the highest-level auction held in Trump City. This level of auction was only held once every 100 years. Every time, many priceless treasures would appear in the super auction, and there would even be holy weapons, which are the best things that even overlords in the universe would covet. After Qin Xuan understood the situation of the super auction, his heart was filled with yearning. Although he was currently a pauper and couldn't afford to buy anything, it would be good to go to the super auction to broaden his horizons. "This is for you." A.O. Feng handed a blue card to Qin Xuan. "This is a reward for being the champion of the same Galaxy Talisman Array Master Exchange Conference. 10 million star coins." Qin Xuan was shocked to hear A.O. Feng's words. He asked, 10 million star coins? So much? Not much, really not much. A.O. Feng smiled and said to Qin Xuan, 10 million star coins may be able to buy a lot of things in the same galaxy, but there are very few good things that can be bought in Trump City. If it's in the super auction, you may not even be able to buy a single item. I'm giving you this money for emergency use, so that you won't starve to death in Trump City. A.O. Feng wouldn't stay in Trump City for too long. He would leave after a while. At that time, Qin Xuan would be alone in Trump City. If he didn't have any money, it would be difficult for him to move around. "Thank you." Qin Xuan was a little moved. "You're so considerate. Haha, we're friends. You don't have to be so polite." A.O. Feng laughed and said to Qin Xuan, "Let's go down. The entrance to the super auction is right in front of us." The entrance to the super auction was located in a large hall. The hall occupied a large area, but only those with tickets were eligible to enter. There were reserved seats on the tickets, and the customers could directly teleport to their seats. It was very convenient. Not only that, but the auction organizer would also provide one-on-one service for the customers who were attending the super auction for the first time. If the customers had any questions, they could ask the waiter. This service was completely free of charge, which could be said to be quite good. It took me a lot of effort to get 2 tickets. Although the seats are connected, the location is very ordinary. You'll have to bear with it. A.O. Feng handed one of the 2 tickets in his hand to Qin Xuan. Even though he said things like just make do with it, the expression on his face was exceptionally proud. This was because in a super auction, even the worst tickets were hard to come by. They were priceless even if there was a market for them. Although Qin Xuan was not very knowledgeable, he could still see some clues from A.O. Feng's expression. He chuckled and said to A.O. Feng, "I'm already very happy to be able to participate in the super auction thanks to you. How could I have any other thoughts?" The 2 chatted and laughed as they arrived at the ticket inspection area. After the AI system verified the authenticity of the tickets, the 2 were allowed to enter the hall. There were not many people in the hall at this time. Qin Xuan and A.O. Feng could choose to teleport to their destination. Before teleporting, Qin Xuan looked around. Finally, his eyes fixed on a tall figure. A trace of doubt appeared in his eyes. The figure looked very familiar. He seemed to have seen it somewhere before. Just as Qin Xuan was recalling where he had seen that figure before, that person had already left the hall through the teleportation array and entered the auction venue. "What are you looking at?" A.O. Feng glanced at Qin Xuan and then at the empty teleportation portal. He asked, "Did you meet someone?" "No." Qin Xuan shook his head and said to A.O. Feng, "Let's go." Qin Xuan and A.O. Feng each stepped onto a teleportation portal. After the portal was activated, Qin Chuan entered the auction site in the blink of an eye and returned to his seat. What a special teleportation portal. It doesn't make me feel uncomfortable at all. It's just like walking normally. Qin Chuan was a little surprised. He had used many teleportation portals in the past, but this was the first time he had such a special experience. However, what surprised Qin Chuan even more was that the auction site was much smaller than he had imagined. It was only about 1,000 square meters in size. Just as Qin Chuan was feeling surprised and puzzled, Ao Feng's words suddenly rang in his ears. Qin Chuan, don't think that the space here is small. This is a very high-end space folding technology. In fact, the space here is more than 1,000,000 times bigger than what you see. After hearing Ao Feng's explanation, Qin Chuan could not help but ask, space folding technology? Technology? Qin Chuan couldn't help but think of the spatial shield that the black-robed man had released. It seemed that the spatial shield used spatial folding technology. However, compared to the scale of spatial folding technology in front of him, the black-robed man's method was much cruder and more superficial. It's not technology. It's the combination of technology and the power of the law of space. Ao Feng explained to Qin Chuan, in order to achieve the level of the auction site, at least a few late-stage Dongshu realm experts have to continue working together. Qin Chuan looked around curiously and asked, "Where are you?" Ao Feng smiled and explained to Qin Chuan, "I'm in the folded space beside you. You can't see me, but because we're together, we can communicate with each other. If you want to see me, you can ask the staff to adjust it. This way, the two of us can be in the same space." After getting Qin Chuan's approval, the staff immediately adjusted it. Soon, Ao Feng and his seat appeared in front of Qin Chuan. This is really an eye-opener. Qin Chuan looked at Ao Feng and sighed. The law of space is really incomparably mysterious. Ao Feng also sighed. Although the law of space is mysterious, it's nothing compared to the law of time. Unfortunately, there are many practitioners in this world who have mastered the law of space, but almost none of them have mastered the law of time. Chapter 950. The Law of Time. When Ao Feng mentioned the law of time, Qin Chuan asked curiously, "What kind of existence is the law of time?" Ao Feng shook his head and replied, "I've never seen anyone master the law of time. However, according to legends, those who master the law of time can reverse time and control a person's life and death. It's extremely miraculous. Reverse time, control life and death. Just listening to it made one feel incomparably powerful and miraculous. There are countless experts in the universe who want to comprehend the law of time. However, it's a pity that very few people succeed. Even those who succeed only have a superficial understanding of the law of time. They can't be of much use in battle, but even so, it's amazing enough." Ao Feng sighed. "It's a pity that our humanoid race has declined. Otherwise, there might be experts who can master the law of time in this world." Hearing Ao Feng's words, Qin Chuan asked with some doubt, "What does the law of time have to do with the humanoid race?" Ao Feng smiled and said to Qin Chuan, "To be exact, the law of time has something to do with the humanoid race. A long time ago, most of the experts who mastered the law of time in the universe were from the humanoid race. We humanoid race have the bloodline of the humanoid race, so we are naturally more familiar with the law of time. In ancient times, there were some humanoid race who mastered the law of time, but their numbers were extremely small. Ever since the humanoid race disappeared, there were very few people who could master the law of time in the universe. When our humanoid race completely declined, the law of time almost disappeared." After hearing Ao Feng's explanation, Qin Chuan couldn't help but be shocked. He didn't expect that the humanoid race had such a special relationship with the law of time. Didn't this mean that he had a high chance of comprehending the law of time? "Do you know how to comprehend the law of time?" Qin Chuan suppressed his excitement and asked Ao Feng, "What's the price?" Ao Feng was stunned when he heard Qin Chuan's words. He asked with some astonishment, "Do you think that if I knew how to comprehend the law of time, I would still be sitting here?" Hearing Ao Feng's answer, Qin Chuan immediately calmed down. He sighed and said with a wry smile, "I'm thinking too much." "You're not just thinking too much, you're thinking too highly of me." Ao Feng laughed and said to Qin Chuan, "The reason why the law of time is so difficult to comprehend is because the law of time is too profound and complex. It's very difficult for ordinary people to understand it. The other reason is that almost no one knows how to comprehend the law of time. As time passes, the method to comprehend the law of time also passes with time." What a pity of Qin Chuan stared for a moment. He didn't think too much about it. Now that he heard Ao Feng's words, he felt that Ao Feng's words were very reasonable. He knew too little about the universe. While Qin Chuan and Ao Feng were chatting, an attendant suddenly appeared in front of them and said, "I'm sorry to disturb the two of you. I brought you the super auction schedule. If you're interested, you could take a look." Ao Feng's eyes lit up when he heard the attendant. He turned to Qin Chuan and said, "We still want to take a look at the super auction schedule." Qin Chuan was also very interested in the schedule. He also wanted to see what kind of treasures would appear in the super auction. The attendant handed the two schedules to Qin Chuan and Ao Feng. After receiving the schedule, the two couldn't help but look at it. The super auction schedule was divided into 3 parts. The first part was for the elite, the second part was for the epic, and the third part was for the legendary. In the elite part, the first item to be auctioned was a high-grade Dao artifact. Moreover, it was a rare defensive artifact. The starting price was 3 million star coins. When Qin Chuan saw the artifact, he couldn't help but sigh. The starting price of the first item is 3 million star coins. I think that the final price shouldn't be lower than 5 million. You're right. With my money, I can only buy one item. Moreover, it's the cheapest one. But even so, it's still a very good treasure." Ao Feng nodded. Then he turned to Qin Chuan and said, "You're right. Treasures that appear in the super auction are all good. However, only the treasures in the elite part can be auctioned with star coins. The treasures in the epic and legendary parts can't be auctioned with star coins." When Qin Chuan heard this, he immediately turned the schedule to the back. However, what surprised him was that there was no introduction to the treasures in the epic and legendary parts. You don't need to be surprised. With our status, we don't have the qualifications to know the details of the epic and legendary parts in advance. Ao Feng smiled and said, "At the very least, we need to be at the Dongshu stage or have a good seat to know the details of the epic and legendary parts in advance." Upon hearing Ao Feng's explanation, Qin Chuan nodded in understanding. Then, he asked curiously, "What do you need to use for the epic and legendary auctions?" The epic part of the auction uses star stones, which are hard currency in the entire universe. For us cultivators at the spirit severing stage and above, star stones are a commonly used cultivation resource. Therefore, when auctioning high-value treasures, star stones are used as the standard. Ao Feng said to Qin Chuan, "Ordinary currency might be valuable to ordinary people, but for high-level cultivators, it's just a useless worldly possession." When Qin Chuan heard Ao Feng's words, he was stunned. Then he took out a silver-white stone from his storage ring and asked, "Is this a star stone?" When Ao Feng saw Qin Chuan take out a star stone, he was also stunned. Then he said, "Where did you get this star stone? And it looks like its grade isn't low." When Qin Chuan heard this, he looked at Ao Feng with a subtle gaze. Then he replied, "I encountered some star beasts in the past. I got this after killing them. But there aren't many of them, only a few dozen." Chapter 9:51. Qin Chuan obtained the star stones from killing Barbarian Wolf in the Air Center. Originally, they were used to power up the Zeus technology gloves. Later on, when the Zeus technology gloves gradually became useless, the star stones were saved. If Ao Feng didn't mention the star stones, Qin Chuan would have forgotten that he still had some star stones. After hearing Qin Chuan's explanation, Ao Feng couldn't help but widen his eyes. He looked at Qin Chuan in disbelief and said, Star Beast. You actually encountered a star beast. Seeing Ao Feng's shocked expression, Qin Chuan was a little confused and asked, "What's wrong? Are star beasts very rare?" The air center was often attacked by star beasts. He himself had encountered star beasts several times. He originally thought that star beasts should be a very common creature in the universe, but looking at Ao Feng's expression, it didn't seem to be the case. Of course, star beasts are rare. Ao Feng said to Qin Chuan in an extremely excited tone. Originally, star beasts were the largest race in the universe. Later on, due to the rise of various races, star beasts were massacred by us. As a result, the number of star beasts rapidly decreased, and they disappeared from the universe. Now, the only place where star beasts still exist is the unexplored dark universe. The so-called dark universe was an unexplored universe. It was precisely because there were almost no other races in the universe that it became the resting place of star beasts. After hearing Ao Feng's explanation, Qin Chuan was very surprised. He didn't expect that star beasts, which were almost everywhere in the Banished Land, would be rare here. Moreover, he also heard some clues from Ao Feng's words. The Banished Land should be in the unexplored dark universe. Ao Feng looked at Qin Chuan with a strange gaze and asked, "Brother, tell me the truth. How many star beasts did you kill?" Qin Chuan grinned and replied, "More than 100. After hearing Qin Chuan's answer, Ao Feng immediately beat his chest and stamped his feet. His face was filled with heartache and helplessness. After a while, he said to Qin Chuan, "You didn't kill 100 star beasts. You obtained at least 10 epic grade treasures." Qin Chuan heard this and asked in astonishment, "What do you mean? In a universe where star beasts are rare, many people sell star beasts as top-grade pets. Every star beast can be sold for at least tens of millions of star beasts. And if it's a star beast, it can be sold, for example. If you capture all these star beasts and sell them, you can definitely become a millionaire with a net worth of billions. But if you kill all these star beasts and get star stones, you'll only get a few hundred star stones. If you use your net worth of billions to buy star stones, you'll get at least a few 100,000 star stones." Seeing Ao Feng shaking his head and sighing, Qin Chuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. At that time, he was still in the Banished Land. How could he have thought of so many things? However, Ao Feng's words reminded him of one thing. Back then, in order to preserve food for the little armor dragon, he still had a lot of corpses of barbaric wolves in his storage ring. I wonder if the corpses of star beasts are valuable, the ones that are kept intact. Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Ao Feng was slightly surprised and asked, "You still have corpses of star beasts? Quickly take them out and let me see." Qin Chuan immediately took out the corpse of a barbarian wolf from his storage ring. When Ao Feng saw the corpse of the barbarian wolf, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He exclaimed, "This is the star beast you killed?" Qin Chuan nodded and asked, "What's wrong? Is there something wrong?" "What a waste of God's gift! What a waste of God's gift!" Ao Feng wailed. "If this was a living star beast, it would definitely be a treasure to be included in this super auction. It could be sold for at least 100,000 star stones. You killed it and only got a single star stone." After hearing Ao Feng's explanation, Qin Chuan felt a little dizzy. When he thought of the tens of thousands of barbaric wolves led by Man-Man, it was as if he saw a star-stone vein running through the universe. "How many of these perfectly preserved corpses do you have?" Ao Feng looked at Qin Chuan. "If there are enough of them, can you sell them for a bit of money?" Hearing this, Qin Chuan immediately counted the stock in his storage ring and replied, "There are a total of 60 corpses." Originally, he had more than 100 barbaric wolves' corpses, but during this period of time, many of them were eaten by the armored dragon. Now, there were only 60 corpses left. So many. Ao Feng was extremely shocked. Although the dead star beasts aren't worth much, the ones in your hand that look so good can still be made into specimens. They have a certain collection value. I estimate that 60 corpses can be sold for about 300,000 star stones. Hearing this, Qin Chuan asked curiously, "What grade of starstone are you talking about?" Ao Feng explained to Qin Chuan, "Starstones are divided into first grade, second grade, and 3rd grade. I'm talking about 3rd grade starstones. This is also the standard used by all the major auctions. 2nd grade and 1st grade starstones are rarely used for transactions. Generally, they're used by cultivators in the process of cultivation. The one you just took out is at least a 2nd grade starstone, right? Qinchuan nodded. Although he didn't have many starstones in his hand, most of them were 1st grade starstones. There are also some 2nd grade starstones, but there were very few 3rd grade starstones. 3rd grade starstones are very common, and 2nd grade starstones aren't rare. However, 1st grade starstones are really rare. If you want to exchange them, a 1st grade starstone could be exchanged for tens of thousands of 3rd grade starstones. However, very few people would exchange them like this. After all, 1st grade starstones are also considered treasures. They are priceless. Ao Feng looked at Qinchuan with a subtle gaze and said, "You better keep the high-grade starstones in your hand. Don't exchange them for 3rd grade starstones." Qinchuan asked curiously, "Since star beasts are very rare in the universe, how do we get starstones?" Ao Feng explained to Qinchuan, "The starstones produced by star beasts are generally high-grade starstones. The 3rd grade starstones that we usually use as high-grade currency exist in the universe in mineral veins. Therefore, they're not rare." Qinchuan nodded in understanding. Suddenly, he took out 3 2nd grade starstones and handed them to Ao Feng. He said to Ao Feng, "Brother Ao has solved my doubts. Take these 3 2nd grade starstones as my thanks to Brother Ao. Brother Ao, please don't refuse. Just accept them." Ao Feng looked at the 3 2nd grade starstones handed over by Qinchuan. After a slight hesitation, he reached out and accepted them. He said to Qinchuan, "Brother Qin, these 2nd grade starstones are very important cultivation resources for us cultivators. It's really hard for me to refuse your good intentions. Later on, if there's an auction item that you want, I will definitely try my best to help you get it." Chapter 952. When Qinchuan called the attendant over, the attendant was stunned when she saw the 60 neatly arranged corpses of the barbaric wolves. She had worked in this super auction for so many years, but this was the first time she had seen so many corpses of star beasts. "I wonder if these corpses can participate in this super auction." Qinchuan looked at the attendant. "If they can, then take them to the auction. This is possible, but I need to ask for instructions from my superiors. Please wait a moment." The attendant glanced at Qinchuan, then immediately turned around and left. Soon after, the attendant returned, and this time, there was an additional manager beside her. The manager also looked at the 60 corpses of the barbaric wolves on the ground after entering the room. After a while, he turned his gaze to Qinchuan and asked with a subtle tone, "Sir, are you sure you want to auction off these corpses?" Qinchuan nodded and asked, "What's the price?" The manager immediately replied, "I will divide these corpses into 6 groups for auction. The starting price for each group will be set at 100,000 starstones. What do you think?" The starting price of 100,000 starstones had far exceeded Qinchuan and Ao Feng's expectations. Qinchuan quickly agreed and said to the manager, "Then let's do it this way." After receiving Qinchuan's confirmation, the manager immediately said, "Sir, since you have an item to be auctioned, your seats will automatically be upgraded to VIP rooms. I will arrange for the attendant to bring you to another room. Please wait a moment." After Qinchuan signed the authorization, the manager took away the 60 corpses of the barbaric wolves. Qinchuan and Ao Feng also entered the VIP room under the arrangement of the attendant. Compared to their previous room, which was about 100 square meters, the VIP room was at least 1,000 square meters. Moreover, from the seats to the service, everything had been upgraded. The experience was excellent. This time, I am basking in your glory. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have the chance to come here in my lifetime. Ao Feng looked at the environment in the VIP room and sighed. Those who can come to the VIP room are either rich or powerful. You could be considered as one of them. Qinchuan chuckled and said to Ao Feng, "With your talent, I believe that you will be able to sit here with your own strength sooner or later." Ao Feng shook his head and sighed. Unless you become the overlord of the universe, who could be carefree? Father was at the middle stage of the Dongshu realm, the #1 expert in the Sinai galaxy. Yet he still died silently. Hearing Ao Feng's words, Qin Xuan sighed. Even a cultivator couldn't see life and death. This was human nature. While Qin Xuan and Ao Feng were chatting, the super auction was finally about to begin. Due to the space folding technology, Qin Xuan and the others were sitting right in front of the auction stage. They could clearly see everything happening on the stage. When a beautiful woman in a tight, white dress stepped onto the auction stage, a soft music immediately sounded in the auction venue, causing everyone's mood to involuntarily relax. Ladies and gentlemen, I am the auctioneer of this super auction, Huizi. I will conduct the elite and epic auctions for you. Huizi smiled and said to the crowd, according to the rules, you can choose to make a sound or use your number to bid. We don't have any restrictions in this regard. In order to ensure the lively atmosphere of the auction, there were very few auctions where people were prohibited from making a sound. Of course, in order to protect the privacy of some customers, the auction hall also allowed people to use their numbers to bid silently. The method of bidding was entirely up to the customer. Without further ado, let's welcome today's first auction item, the high-grade Taoist weapon, Cloud Armor. The starting price is 3 million star coins. Each bid must be at least 100,000 star coins. Following Huizi's words, an armor that was as soft as a cloud appeared on the stage. It emitted a soft and hazy light. Soon, someone called out the first price. 3 million, 3,100,000. With one bid after another, the atmosphere of the auction hall suddenly became lively. During this auction, almost no one used their numbers to make a silent bid. Everyone was shouting their bids, each more excited than the other. In the end, the price of the cloud armor was fixed at 5,500,000 star coins. It was bought by a mysterious customer in an ordinary seat. Then, Huizi brought out the second auction item. It was also a high-grade Taoist weapon, but this time it was a saber. The high-grade Taoist weapon, Sky Flame Saber. The starting price is 5 million star coins. Each bid must be at least 100,000 star coins. As the elite auction items were auctioned one after another, the atmosphere of the auction hall became more and more heated. Qin Xuan had been watching the auction with the mentality of watching a good show. He didn't encounter anything he wanted to bid on. Soon, all 99 elite auction items were auctioned. None of them were unsold. The highest price was a set of 10 bottles of Berserker Potion, which was sold at a sky-high price of 200 million star coins. After taking this potion, it could allow a person to unleash 3 times their strength, and it only lasted for a short 5 seconds. At first, Qin Xuan didn't understand why such an ordinary Berserker Potion could be sold at such a high price. When Ao Feng told him that it was a product of the Heavenly Pill Hall and had no side effects, he suddenly understood. Although the effect and duration of this Berserker Potion were somewhat unsatisfactory, the fact that it had no side effects was enough to tempt many people. After the elite auction was over, the epic auction was about to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, the first auction item of our epic auction today is a little special. It is divided into 6 groups, and each group has 10 sets. At this point, the expression on Huizi's face became a little subtle. The audience at the auction hall was also very curious. What was the first auction item of this epic auction? There were actually 60 sets. Some of the high-end customers who had seen the auction process before were also a little surprised. Could it be that there was a new auction item cutting the queue? The first auction item in the auction process didn't have 60 sets. When the corpses of the 10 barbaric wolves were neatly placed on the auction stage, the audience was a little confused. What do they see? These are the corpses of 10 star beasts, and they're the extremely rare barbaric wolf corpses. They're preserved extremely well. There are a total of 60 corpses, and they are divided into 6 groups for auction. The starting price of each group is 100,000 star stones, and each bid must be at least 5,000 star stones. As Huizi's voice fell, the auction hall was suddenly filled with gasps. None of them had thought that the first auction item of the epic auction process would be the corpses of star beasts. Moreover, there were 60 of them. Chapter 953. Who did this? It's simply a waste of resources. Too cruel. Who did this? Who would actually kill these cute star beasts? Isn't this too crazy? Someone is actually willing to kill star beasts. And 60 of them at that. As soon as Wheezy's voice fell, the auction venue was immediately filled with curses. Everyone was angrily crusading against the owners of these barbarian wolves' corpses. How great would it be if these star beasts were all alive? How could anyone bear to kill such handsome and domineering star beasts? They were simply inhuman. When Qin Xuan heard these curses, the expression on his face immediately became rather interesting. He really didn't expect that he would attract so many curses because of these barbaric wolves' corpses. It was as if he had done something unforgivable. Ao Feng, who was sitting beside Qin Xuan, couldn't help but reveal a smile when he saw this. He said to Qin Xuan, "It's already very good that they are cursing you here. If you appear in front of them now, do you believe that they won't beat you up?" There's even a group of people at the side clapping their hands and cheering. Moreover, with the style of the super auction, they must have muted all the customers in the ordinary seats. The ones who can still curse you now are at least the customers in the VIP boxes. If not, I'm afraid there will be even more people cursing you. Hearing Ao Feng's words, Qin Xuan couldn't help but bitterly smile and helplessly said, "At that time, I also didn't know that today's matter would happen. Alas, I can only say that I'm still too young." But don't worry, the super auction still attaches great importance to protecting the privacy of the customers. As long as you don't go out and say that you killed those wolves, others won't find trouble with you. Ao Feng chuckled and said to Qin Xuan, "In any case, I won't betray you." Just as Qin Xuan and Ao Feng were chatting, the auction officially began. Although everyone was cursing fiercely, their actions weren't slow at all. In just a short moment, the price of the first set of 10 corpses had reached 150,000 star stones. Qin Xuan was very satisfied with this price. If he calculated it this way, the 6 sets of corpses could be sold for at least 1,000,000 star stones. The 6 sets of barbaric wolf corpses were auctioned off one after another. Every set was sold at a maximum price of 150,000 star stones, and they were sold for a total of 900,000 star stones. Congratulations, congratulations. Brother Qin, you've become rich overnight. Ao Feng enviously said to Qin Xuan, "I'm really envious of your good luck. If Brother Qin encounters another star beast, you must remember to capture it alive." Qin Xuan smiled bitterly and said to Ao Feng, "I met the star beast by chance and killed them to protect myself." Qin Xuan wasn't lying about this. Back when he was locked up in prison, he had indeed encountered star beasts by chance. He had also killed these star beasts to protect himself. Qin Xuan and Ao Feng chatted happily while Huizi started the auction for the second item in the epic stage. The second item was an ancient strange stone. No one knew where this strange stone came from, but one thing was for sure. Even an overlord of the universe couldn't damage this strange stone in the slightest. The starting price of this ancient strange stone is 10,000 star stones. Each increment must be at least 1,000 star stones. This was supposed to be the first item in the epic stage, but because Qin Xuan cut the queue, it became the second item. Therefore, the starting price was slightly lower. When they saw this fist-sized ancient stone appear on the auction stage, the others did not have any special reactions. However, Qin Xuan was shocked. This was because he had seen this ancient stone twice in the land of exile. Moreover, he had obtained it both times. Just as Qin Xuan was thinking about this, the runic sword in his mind started buzzing, indicating a strong demand for this ancient strange stone. 10,000, 11,000, 15,000. There were very few bidders for this ancient wondrous stone. Just as everyone thought that the price of this ancient wondrous stone would be raised to 11,000, someone suddenly shouted out a bid of 15,000. That's right, This person was Qin Chuan. After hearing Qin Chuan's bid, Ao Feng looked at Qin Chuan in surprise and asked in confusion, "Why are you bidding for this item?" Qin Chuan laughed and said to Ao Feng, "After earning some money, I have to buy something as a souvenir. I think this is the only item in the epic stage that has a collectible value and is relatively cheap, so I want to buy it for fun." After hearing Qin Chuan's words, Ao Feng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Although the star stones belonged to Qin Chuan, and Qin Chuan was free to spend them however he wanted, it was not worth it to spend 10,000 star stones or even more to buy a collectible. However, as Qin Chuan said, buying a collectible as a souvenir was not a big deal. 16,000, 20,000. When someone raised the price again, Qin Chuan showed his determination to win this ancient strange stone. He successfully dissuaded the other bidders and won the ancient strange stone for 20,000 star stones. After Huizi made the final decision, Qin Chuan let out a long sigh of relief. He wasn't afraid that others would continue to raise the price, but he was worried that if others saw that he was determined to win this ancient strange stone, they might have other intentions. After winning the ancient strange stone, Qin Chuan asked Ao Feng curiously, "Does this ancient strange stone appear in auctions often?" Ao Feng replied, "Although it's not very common, it's not rare either. At least, I have seen this ancient strange stone appear in auctions 4 or 5 times. Many people are willing to spend a little money to buy it as a collectible. Some are the size of a fist, some are the size of a thumb, and the shape is not fixed." After hearing Ao Feng's words, Qin Chuan couldn't help but feel a little moved. Didn't this mean that he could buy this ancient strange stone often? It was just that he didn't know what effect this ancient strange stone had on the runic sword. When Qin Chuan thought of this, the ancient strange stone in his brain immediately responded. This ancient strange stone was actually the same as the runic stone. It could repair the runic sword, but there were no runes engraved on it, so the effect was weaker. It was roughly equivalent to a Dao rune. In other words, it could repair about 1% of the damage done to the runic sword. After receiving the runic sword's response, Qin Chuan's eyes immediately lit up. The price of this kind of ancient stone was not considered expensive. If it could work on both sides, wouldn't he be able to repair the runic sword even faster? Of course, Qin Chuan was only thinking about it. After all, he couldn't participate in the auction every day, and he couldn't look for Dao runes everywhere. Therefore, the matter of repairing the runic sword was still a long way off. Chapter 954. The epic auction continued. Every item that appeared on the stage aroused the great interest of everyone present, especially when a translucent shield appeared on the auction stage. The atmosphere of the scene suddenly reached a climax. This shield is called the Empty Shield. It contains a certain amount of space law power. Its defensive capability is extremely strong. Even an early-stage Dongshu realm cultivator can't damage the Empty Shield in the slightest. Huizi smiled slightly and said to everyone, "But this isn't the main point. The main point is that the Empty Shield is a semi-sage tool. As long as it is properly nurtured, it has a great possibility of being promoted to a sage tool." Semi-sage tool. Hearing Huizi's introduction, the customers at the scene suddenly exclaimed. Qin Chuan was even more shocked. A treasure of this level actually appeared in the epic auction. What kind of amazing treasure would appear in a legendary auction later? The starting price of the Empty Shield is 10 million star stones. Each bid must not be less than 1 million star stones. Just hearing the starting price of the Empty Shield, Qin Chuan completely gave up on the idea of the Empty Shield. With the star stones he had, he didn't even have enough to raise the price once, let alone bid. However, although Qin Chuan couldn't afford the Empty Shield, there were a lot of people present who could afford it. Soon, the price of the Empty Shield was pushed to the sky. 10 million, 15 million, 20 million. In just a moment, the price of the Empty Shield had reached 20 million star stones. And this was just the beginning. As more and more people joined the bidding, the price of the empty shield also soared sharply. This is really crazy. Qin Chuan sighed and said, "Previously, I thought I was already a rich man with nearly 1 million starstones. But compared to these people who are bidding, my starstones are really nothing." Just as Qin Chuan was speaking, the price of the empty shield had soared to an exaggerated 40 million starstones. And this wasn't the end. There were still many people bidding. Ao Feng sighed after hearing this. Then, he looked at Qin Chuan and said, "It's mainly because a treasure like the empty shield is too rare. Every time it appears, it will inevitably lead to a fierce competition. This is a semi-sage tool that contains the power of space laws. It's much more precious than some ordinary sage tools. Once this empty shield is nurtured into a true holy weapon, it will be difficult for anyone to break through its defense unless they are universe overlords." Hearing Ao Feng's words, Qin Chuan asked curiously, "Then how do we nurture the empty shield into a sacred item?" "You're putting me in a difficult position by asking me this question. This is something that only Dongshu stage cultivators can do." Ao Feng chuckled. "I don't know how to operate it, but everyone has their own way. 80 million. This old man, Sunset, is determined to obtain this shield. I hope that everyone will yield." When this customer, who called himself Sunset, shouted these words, he successfully silenced the auction. Everyone seemed to be afraid of this Sunset. Unexpectedly, no one made another bid. Seeing this, Qin Chuan asked curiously, "Who is this Sunset?" Ao Feng whispered to Qin Chuan, "This Sunset is not simple. He is one of the top 10 experts in our Tailang Nebula. People call him Venerable Sunset. He is a powerful cultivator in the late stage of Dongshu realm." Hearing Ao Feng's explanation, Qin Chuan couldn't help but have a subtle look in his eyes. So this Sunset was a late Dongshu stage cultivator. No wonder everyone was so afraid of him and didn't dare to make another bid. He was clearly using his power to oppress others. In fact, Sundown has broken the rules of the auction house. But there's no other way. Sundown is too strong. Even if he broke the rules of the auction house, no one would dare to say a word about it. Ao Feng sighed. This is the benefit of being strong. Just as Qin Chuan and Ao Feng were talking, Huizi finally dropped the hammer. In the end, the empty shield was won by Sunset at the high price of 80 million starstones. Although this price was a little low, it couldn't be helped. Let us warmly congratulate Sunset Knight for winning the empty shield. Even though she was dissatisfied, Huizi still had to smile and express her most sincere congratulations to Sunset. At the same time, she hoped that Sunset would not continue to use his power to oppress others and destroy the next auction. Now, let's continue with the next auction item, the scripture. Huizi smiled and said to everyone, "This scripture came from the ruins of the human race. Most of the words on it are broken, but it still has a certain reference value and research value. The starting price of this scripture is 15 million starstones. Each bid must not be less than 1 million starstones." Hearing Huizi's introduction, Qin Chuan was a little surprised and said, "It's just a scripture. How can it be so valuable?" "Brother Qin, sometimes I really want to know where you came from. You don't know anything at all." Ao Feng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said to Qin Chuan, "This scripture may mean nothing to ordinary people, but to some powerful cultivators who want to comprehend the time law, it is extremely precious. Do you understand now?" Qin Chuan was slightly taken aback. He asked, "Do you mean that comprehending the time law might be comprehended by comprehending the scripture?" "It's not just a possibility, it's a very high probability because this kind of thing has happened before," Ao Feng said to Qin Chuan. Previously, there were two universe overlords who comprehended some superficial knowledge of the time law. The reason why they could do so was that they each had a scripture from the ruins of the human race. After hearing Ao Feng's explanation, Qin Chuan finally understood the meaning of this scripture. At the same time, the price of this scripture had reached a shocking 50 million starstones, and the momentum seemed to be even fiercer than the previous empty shield. 100 million. Finally, someone directly made a shocking bid of 100 million star stones, and the person who made this bid was Sunset, who had won the empty shield. This time, Sunset didn't use his power to suppress others. Instead, he used his wealth to suppress others. When someone tried to make a bid of 101 million star stones, Sunset didn't hesitate to raise the price to a shocking 110 million star stones. Finally, no one else made a bid, and the scripture was once again in Sunset's possession. Congratulations, Sunset Knight, for winning this scripture from the ruins of the human race at a price of 110 million star stones. Let's give you a round of applause once again. Wheezy said to the crowd with a smile. My task has been completed. Next, the auction will be continued by the organizer of this auction, Tushan Hao, the fourth elder of the Tushan family. After saying this, Wheezy bowed to the front and then walked down the stage. Tushan Hao, the fourth elder of the Tushan family? When Qin Xuan heard this name, a subtle look flashed across his eyes. Chapter 955. After Wheezy's figure completely disappeared, it didn't take long for a middle-aged man in a white robe to slowly ascend the auction stage. This middle-aged man looked somewhat similar to Tushan Yu, whom Qin Xuan had seen before. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Tushan Hao, the fourth elder of the Tushan family. Today, I am honored to be here to conduct the legendary auction for everyone. If there is anything I have done wrong, please forgive me. After saying this, Tushan Hao cupped his hands slightly towards the crowd, appearing quite elegant. However, Qin Xuan thought that Tushan Hao's humble attitude and his words were not directed towards everyone, but towards the strong ones, such as Venerable Sunset. Qin Xuan looked at Tushan Hao and asked Ao Feng, "How strong is this Tushan Hao?" Hearing this, Ao Feng answered, "The middle Dongshu stage isn't the strongest in the Tushan family. As far as I know, the Tushan family has at least 2 late Dongshu stage cultivators. Otherwise, the Tushan family wouldn't be able to sit firmly on the throne of the number 1 family in the Trongstar Cloud." Hearing Ao Feng's words, Qin Xuan nodded slightly and did not ask any more questions. At this time, the legendary auction was about to begin. There are a total of 5 items in the legendary auction. Now, it is time for the first item. Tushan Hao said to the crowd, "The first item is a sacred item, octagonal pearl." Sacred item, octagonal pearl. As soon as Tushan Hao finished speaking, a light golden pearl the size of a football appeared on the auction stage, emitting a strange light. What a big deal! Ao Feng could not help but sigh when he saw the octagonal pearl. I did not expect the first item of the legendary auction to be a sacred item. Although it is only a standard sacred item, it is still amazing enough. Qin Xuan was still amazed at the big deal of the super auction. Hearing Ao Feng's words, he could not help but be slightly surprised. He asked with some doubts, "Standard sacred item? Are there many octagonal pearls in this world?" Ao Feng nodded. Then he explained to Qin Xuan, "That's right, there are indeed a lot of octagonal pearls in this world. But even if there are a lot, there wouldn't be more than 10 of them." Without waiting for Qin Xuan to ask again, Ao Feng continued, "The reason for this is because the octagonal bead is an extremely advanced technological product. In other words, the octagonal bead has a production process and blueprint. It's not a unique sacred tool that can be created by imagination. In theory, as long as there are sufficient materials, the octagonal bead can be created without limit." After hearing Ao Feng's explanation, Qin Xuan couldn't help but be dumbfounded. He had seen some standard products in the past, but this was the first time he had heard that there were standard products among the sacred tools. Just as Qin Xuan and Ao Feng were talking, the auction for the octagonal bead had already begun. However, there was no starting price, and the atmosphere in the hall was quiet for a while. Qin Xuan was a little confused about this, but Ao Feng, who had long been used to his ignorance, quickly gave him an answer. The legendary auction process is different from the previous 2 processes. It does not support the measurement of currency or star stones. Instead, it supports the exchange of items. Simply put, you have to take out something that the owner of the octagonal bead is interested in to exchange for it. Ao Feng said to Qin Chuan. Although the octagonal bead is a sacred tool, it is only one of the most common types of sacred tools. Not many people have a need for it. Qin Chuan asked curiously, then what is the function of the octagonal bead? The function of the octagonal bead is to monitor everything. You can think of it as a top-notch alarm system. Normally, only powerful cultivators who have founded their own sects or large families like the Tushan family will use the octagonal bead. Ao Feng said to Qin Chuan, the octagonal bead doesn't have any offensive power, but even a universe overlord won't be able to hide under the surveillance of the octagonal bead. Hearing Ao Feng's explanation, Qin Chuan nodded knowingly. It turned out that the octagonal bead had such a magical function. It might be of little value to ordinary cultivators, but to some rich and powerful families, it was quite useful. At this moment, Tushan Hao, who was standing on the auction stage, announced the item that the owner of the octagonal bead wanted to exchange for the longevity grass. Although the longevity grass was called grass, it wasn't grass. It was a kind of magic medicine that could prolong one's life. Directly swallowing the longevity grass could prolong one's life by 100 years. If one could find a master alchemist to refine the longevity grass, one could get 4 to 5 bottles of the longevity grass, each of which could prolong one's life by 100 years. Both the longevity grass and the longevity grass were extremely precious treasures in the universe. They were irresistibly tempting to some cultivators who were nearing the end of their lifespans. Obviously, the owner of the octagonal bead should be a cultivator who was nearing the end of his lifespan. After a moment of silence, someone said blandly, I don't have the longevity grass, but I do have a bottle of longevity grass. I can add some other things to the deal. Hearing that, Tushan Hao shook his head and responded, this mister told me that he only wants the longevity grass. He doesn't want anything else. Hearing Tushan Hao's words, the auction house became quiet again. Although the octagonal bead was a sacred item, it wasn't rare. However, the longevity grass was a real rarity. It was rarely seen outside. Even if someone had it, they wouldn't be willing to trade it. After a long silence, Tushan Hao frowned slightly and asked, is there no one willing to trade? Just as Tushan Hao's voice faded, someone suddenly said, I don't have the longevity grass, but I have a longevity pill from the ruins of the human race. It can prolong one's life by 300 years. Hearing this person's words, the scene suddenly became restless. Many people had heard of the name of the longevity pill. This thing was a rare treasure in ancient times. Ancient human beings were good at concocting pills. Our current pill concocting skills are based on the ancient humans' pill concocting skills. The main ingredient of the longevity pill is the longevity grass. Ao Feng said to Qin Chuan, with our current pill concocting skills, we can only concoct 4 to 5 bottles of longevity pills with 1 longevity grass. However, in the ancient times, 1 longevity grass was enough to concoct tens of longevity pills. In my opinion, that pill concocting skill was a real immortal skill. Unfortunately, it has been lost for a long time. Very few people in the world still know about pill concocting skills, and no one can concoct top-grade pills. Hearing this, Qin Chuan's eyes flashed with a subtle light. He asked, didn't you find any more books about pill concocting skills in the ruins of the human race? Of course, we did, but finding them is one thing, learning them is another. Ao Feng chuckled and said to Qin Chuan, there are some things that other races can't learn. Only the real ancient human beings can learn them. Chapter 956. Let us congratulate this friend of mine for acquiring the octagonal bead with a longevity pill. As Tushan Hao's voice faded, the auction for the first item of the legendary process, the octagonal bead, came to an end. In terms of value, the octagonal bead was worth at least 200 million star stones, which was quite amazing. Then, the second item was placed on the auction stage. Now, we're going to auction the second item of the legendary process. Tushan Hao lifted the red silk covering the plate and showed a dark purple, fist-sized piece of metal in front of the crowd. He said loudly, "According to the legends, when a god fell, his blood dyed the earth red." That was how the Godfall Iron was born. It is the cornerstone of a divine weapon, and the beginning of a divine weapon. Hearing Tushan Hao's introduction, the crowd looked at the Godfall Iron on the plate and exclaimed, "Godfall Iron! It's Godfall Iron! I can't believe that the meteorite iron will appear in this super auction. Someone is actually willing to put such a treasure up for auction. Is he crazy?" Hearing the crowd's discussion about the Godfall Iron, Qinchuan couldn't help but look at Ao Feng. Ao Feng understood and immediately said to Qinchuan, "The Godfall Iron is a very special material, mainly used to make divine weapons. It's extremely rare. Even 10 octagonal beads added together might not be worth as much as one piece of Godfall Iron." When Qinchuan heard this, he asked curiously, "Since this divine meteorite metal is so precious, why would anyone be willing to take it out for auction?" To be honest, I'm very curious about that too. Ao Feng was confused as well. The Godfall Iron was an extremely rare treasure for anyone. He couldn't figure out why that person would want to auction it. While Qinchuan and Ao Feng were talking, Tushan Hao announced the item that the person wanted to trade the Godfall Iron for. It was an offensive divine weapon. Among the many divine weapons, most of them didn't have offensive properties. Most of them could only play a supporting role. Defensive divine weapons were already the best among the divine weapons and were relatively rare. Offensive divine weapons were even rarer. Although the Godfall Iron was a rare treasure, it was still not enough to trade for an offensive divine weapon. Therefore, after Tushan Hao's announcement, the auction site fell silent again. Although the Godfall Iron is a good item, an offensive sacred artifact is the best of the best, a treasure among treasures. If it is not for the fact that they want to forge a sacred artifact and coincidentally need the Godfall Iron, I don't think anyone would be willing to trade with him. Ao Feng looked at the fist-sized Godfall Iron and said to Qinchuan, "I think it wouldn't be a problem for him to trade it for a defensive divine weapon." Hearing Ao Feng's words, Qinchuan was lost in thought while looking at the Godfall Iron. However, the runic sword in his mind sent him a message again. The runic sword wanted the Godfall Iron. "You want the Godfall Iron?" After receiving the message from the runic sword, Qinchuan was slightly stunned. He asked the runic sword in confusion, "Does the Godfall Iron have a restorative effect on you?" The runic sword responded to Qinchuan again. Although the Godfall Iron didn't have restorative effect on him, it could increase his strength. After receiving the runic sword's response, Qinchuan sighed helplessly. However, the other party specifically stated that he wants to use an offensive sacred artifact to conduct the transaction. Let alone an offensive sacred artifact. I don't even have the most ordinary octagonal beads. Qinchuan also wanted to get the Godfall Iron for the runic sword, but he didn't have enough money. He couldn't afford it at all. Facing Qinchuan's helplessness, the runic sword remained silent for a while and responded again. Not for the time being. After receiving the latest response from the runic sword, Qinchuan let out a sigh of relief. If the runic sword insisted on getting the Godfall Iron, he really didn't know what to do. After a long period of silence, Tushan Hao coughed softly and said, "The owner of the Godfall Iron just contacted me. He told me that he has changed his mind. He wants to trade the Godfall Iron for a unique divine weapon. Everyone can take out the divine weapons you are willing to trade. He will choose the one he wants the most." After a short period of silence, someone finally took out a support-type saint artifact. This item is called the Soul Cleansing Jade. It has the effect of cleansing the mind and calming the soul. For powerful cultivators like us, it can eliminate nightmares. For formation masters, it can strengthen their mental strength and allow their mental strength to recover faster. However, these effects are only secondary. The most important thing is that it can be used to break all illusions. As long as you wear it, you can ensure that you are always in a clear-headed state, unaffected by any external factors. After hearing this person's introduction, Everyone felt that the soul-cleansing jade was a good treasure. However, compared to the value of the Godfall iron, it was not worth it. But soon, someone took out a second divine weapon. This divine weapon of mine is called the wind drum. As long as you beat this drum, all the wind within a radius of 10,000 li will be under your control. You can order the wind to do anything. You can also attack. However, its attack power is only equivalent to the full power attack of an early Dongshu stage cultivator. But the wind wall formed by this wind drum is not weak. It can withstand the attack of a late Dongshu stage cultivator. For powerful cultivators at the Dongshu stage, the wind drum's attack power was equivalent to nothing. As for its defensive power, it was not particularly outstanding. However, the wind drum's advantage was that it was all-round. Among ordinary divine weapons, it was not bad. Aside from those two, no one else brought out a sacred artifact to trade. Firstly, unique sacred artifacts were rare treasures. They would have miraculous effects in various aspects. Very few people would be willing to bring out the sacred artifacts they were used to trade. Secondly, the average person would only possess one sacred artifact. Very few would possess a second sacred artifact. Thus, those who could bring out a sacred artifact to trade for the Godfall iron ores would possess at least two sacred artifacts. Additionally, the sacred artifacts that were brought out were of little value, such as the soul-cleansing jade pendant. This soul-cleansing jade is a good divine weapon. To a talisman formation master like Qin Xuan, the soul clarity jade pendant could be said to be a rather good saint artifact. However, it was only a thought in his mind. The treasures in his possession were either far more valuable than the soul clarity jade pendant or far less valuable, so it was utterly impossible for him to make a trade with it. As far as he was concerned, if the owner of the God Meteor Iron wasn't a talisman formation master, then the owner would probably choose the more comprehensive saint artifact, Wind Drum. Chapter 9:57. Unexpectedly and reasonably, the owner of the God Meteorite Iron gave up on the deal, which meant the God Meteorite Iron stream would be auctioned off. The Spirit Cleansing Jade and the Wind Drum were both good holy weapons, but they were not as good as the God Meteorite Iron, which could be used as the core of a holy weapon or even used to make a godly weapon. Therefore, people understood why the owner of the God Meteorite Iron gave up on the deal. No one thought it was inappropriate. After all, there are all kinds of problems in bartering, which were difficult to solve. Unfortunately, the God Meteorite Iron stream will be auctioned off. Now, let's move on to the third item. Tushan Hao grinned and said to the others, "The third auction item is a bit special because it comes from a relic of the spirit creature kind, one of the top 10 ancient spirit creatures. It's a treasure left by the ancient spirit creatures." Hearing Tushan Hao, everyone was curious and expectant. What would the treasures left by the ancient spirit beasts look like? Under the gazes of the public, Tushan Hao lifted the red silk covering the third item and showed it to the public. The third item was a milky white bone, which seemed to be the spine of some kind of monster. This vertebra looked ordinary, but everyone could clearly sense the astonishing power contained within it. Once it exploded, it would definitely be able to destroy the heavens and earth. According to the research of the masters of the super auction, it's basically confirmed that this spine came from a tiger demon, at least at the overlord level of the universe. If we can find some secrets of the demon race from it, we might be able to gain great benefits. People couldn't help but exclaim when they heard Tushan Hao's introduction. None of them thought that this spine came from a tiger demon at the overlord level of the universe. The spine of such a powerful demon was definitely a priceless treasure. Facing the others' excitement, Tushan Hao chuckled and said to the others, "The owner of this spine wants to trade for a level 6 magic formation with this spine. No auxiliary magic formation. A 6th level charm array, no auxiliary array." It meant that the owner wanted a 6th level battle array. A 6th level auxiliary array wasn't something rare. Every big force had some collections, but a 6th level battle array was extremely rare. It was as valuable as a holy weapon with offensive power. Therefore, when this condition was proposed, the auction site fell into silence again. The atmosphere was very strange. After a long while, someone suddenly said slowly, "This spine of a tiger demon at the overlord level of the universe is a rare treasure." Although 6th-level battle arrays are rare, in terms of value, this spine must be more valuable than a 6th-level battle array. Why is this friend willing to trade this spine for a 6th-level battle array? In my opinion, this friend must have studied this spine for a long time, but couldn't find any secrets of the demon race. That's why he took it out for trade. As soon as this person finished speaking, the crowd started to think. What this person said made sense. This spine seemed to be a treasure, but maybe it was just a piece of chicken rib. It was tasteless, but it would be a pity to throw it away. It would be better to trade it for something useful, such as a 6th-level battle array. Everyone, just now the owner of this spine told me that he hasn't studied this spine. He is a charm array master, and he studies charm arrays every day. He has no time or interest to study this kind of thing. If it weren't for the fact that he urgently wants a 6th-level battle array, he wouldn't have taken this treasure out for trade. Tushan Hao said to the crowd, "This friend has already sworn to the great Tao. What he said is true." Hearing Tushan Hao's words, the auction quieted down again. Since the owner of the spine dared to swear to the great Tao, it meant that he was telling the truth. In this case, the spine was indeed a rare treasure. If anyone could discover some secrets of the demon race or the spiritual will left by a universe overlord from it, they might be rewarded handsomely. Finally, someone couldn't help but put forward his offer. Although I don't have a 6th-level battle array, I know 2 6th-level auxiliary arrays. I'm willing to trade them. I also have 2 6th-level auxiliary arrays. I'm willing to trade them for this spine. I have 3 6th-level auxiliary arrays, and all of them are quite unique. I'm sure this friend will be satisfied. Very quickly, 3 customers who were interested in trading spines raised their conditions. Without exception, they all chose to trade in auxiliary formations. None of them could take out a level 6 battle formation. However, Tushan Hao shook his head and said regretfully, "I'm sorry, everyone. This friend is only willing to trade for a 6th-level battle array. He doesn't need anything else." Hearing Tushan Hao's reply, the people who had proposed their terms earlier felt a little regretful and helpless. Although a 6th-level auxiliary array was rare, there were always ways to get it. However, even a universe overlord might not have a 6th-level battle array, let alone people like them. What a pity. This spine is good stuff, Ao Feng said with a sigh. Ao Feng sighed and said, "However, a Tier 6 battle array is also a good thing. In our Tron star cloud, even a Tier 5 battle array is extremely rare, let alone a Tier 6 battle array. I reckon that if this person wants to obtain a Tier 6 battle array, he would have to go to the Heaven Star Cluster to trade. However, it's not easy to go to the Celestial Cluster from Tron Nebula." Qinchuan was also very interested in this spine. However, as Ao Feng had said, he couldn't even take out a 5th-level battle array, let alone a 6th-level battle array, which was more advanced and precious. Just when everyone thought that the spine was going to be sold off, someone suddenly said, "I have a battle array here, but it's an incomplete rank 6 battle array. If this friend is interested, we can have a private chat." Hearing this, everyone was stunned. This was because the person who had spoken was Sunset Knight, who had repeatedly bid today. Everyone was curious as to whether the Sunset Sage would be able to get what he wanted and obtain the vertebrae from the trade. Soon, under Tushan Hao's arrangement, Sunset Venerable had a short private chat with the owner of the spine. After the private chat, the 2 sides finally decided to make this deal. Let us congratulate Venerable Sunset for obtaining another treasure. Tushan Hao laughed and said to the crowd, "This is the 3rd treasure Sunset Knight has obtained in this super auction. No wonder you are one of the top 10 great beings in Tron Nebula." Chapter 958. As expected of the Sunset Venerable, his foundation is too solid. Ao Feng was very envious. If he could have the strength and foundation of the Sunset Knight, he wouldn't have to be a spectator here. Qin Chuan could understand Ao Feng's feelings, but he didn't envy the Sunset Knight. Qin Chuan believed that with his talent and luck, he could reach the same height as the Sunset Knight sooner or later and even surpass him. All he needed was time. Ao Feng then said to Qin Chuan, "Now that the legendary items have appeared, the Holy Octagonal Pearl, the Meteorite Iron, and the Spine of the Universe Overlord Tiger Demon, I wonder what the last two treasures will be. Since they are placed at the end, they must be the best." Qin Chuan was also curious. Soon, Tushan House satisfied his curiosity and presented the final item to the audience. Looking at the huge object that was about 3 meters tall, everyone's face revealed a hint of curiosity. What exactly was this thing? How could it be so huge? Ladies and gentlemen, the origin of this treasure is also not simple. It is made by the Celestial Cluster's master, Hao Te. While speaking, Tushan had already lifted the red silk cloth. A silver-gray, enormous battle armor showed up in front of everyone's eyes. Seeing this battle armor, Qin Chuan couldn't help but be stunned. Ever since he advanced to the nascent soul stage, he rarely used battle armor in battle. After that, he rarely saw people using battle armor in battle. Today, he suddenly saw battle armor in this super auction. He was really not used to it. It's a battle armor made by Master Hao Te. While Qin Chuan was still in a daze, Ao Feng, who was sitting beside him, was so excited that he was about to jump up. Seeing this, Qin Chuan was puzzled. Could it be that high-level cultivators also need battle armors? Seeing Qin Chuan's confusion, Ao Feng explained to Qin Chuan, "Normal battle armors don't have any power boost for high-level cultivators, but a battle armor made by Master Hao Te is different." Qin Chuan was puzzled. How is it different? Ao Feng turned to look at Qin Chuan and said with a serious expression, "The battle armor forged by Master Hao Te is comparable to an offensive sacred artifact. Offensive holy weapons are rare, but Master Hao Te can make one at any time as long as he is in a good mood. Do you understand?" This time, Qin Chuan was really shocked. He didn't expect this battle armor to be comparable to an offensive holy weapon. This was completely different from the battle armor he knew. While Qin Chuan and Ao Feng were talking, the others were going crazy when they saw the battle armor made by Master Hao Te. This battle armor could even be the finale item in an auction in the Celestial Cluster. Who would have thought that it would appear in a small place like Tron Nebula? It was unbelievable. Everyone, please calm down. Please listen to this friend's conditions. Tushan Hao looked at the crowd and said in a subtle tone, "This friend needs some blood." The blood of ancient humans. Hearing Tushan Hao's conditions, the crowd calmed down in an instant, as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over their heads. Although a battle armor made by a master, Hao Te, was extremely rare, it was nothing compared to the blood of ancient humans. Could it be that this friend is deliberately making fun of us? Blood of ancient humans? Ancient humans have been extinct for hundreds of thousands of years. Where do you want us to find blood of ancient humans? Even if we kill all the living humans in the world and purify their blood, we may not be able to get pure blood of ancient humans. The person who said this was Sunset Venerable. When he saw this battlesuit, he had made up his mind to exchange for it at all costs. However, when he heard the other party's conditions, he was immediately enraged. You want to exchange for human blood? This was purely making fun of them. Sunset Knight was furious, and the others felt the same way. Now, even in the human ruins in the hands of ancient races, they may not be able to find blood of ancient humans, let alone in the hands of these people. Although they were all overlords in Tron Nebula, they were just ordinary existences in the entire universe. How could they possibly have such a treasure as blood of ancient humans? In my opinion, this friend is deliberately showing off to us. A battle armor made by Master Hao Te, even universe overlords may not have it. It is indeed a good thing to show off. Humph, I wonder who this friend is. How could he have such a bad taste? Great beings from various forces were mocking and ridiculing the owner of the battle armor. Qin Chuan was full of curiosity. He wanted to know what this person was going to do with the blood of ancient humans. Facing the crowd's anger, Tushan Hao felt helpless. He had predicted that something like this would happen. However, because it was a deal proposed by a senior in the clan, he couldn't persuade them otherwise. So, he could only let it be. Now he was having a headache. He wanted to know how to deal with this. If you don't want to trade, then I will announce that this battle armor is not being auctioned, Tushan Haote said with a smile. Although Tushan Hao was smiling, he felt helpless in his heart. However, he wasn't the only one who felt helpless. The others also felt helpless in their hearts. No one liked the feeling of watching a treasure slip away right in front of their eyes. Soon, Tushan Hao ordered people to take the battle armor away. If it continued to be displayed here, it would only attract hatred. Now, we're going to auction our most important treasure. This treasure is also strange and has an amazing origin, Tushan Hao said to the crowd. The most important thing is the quota. Quota? Hearing Tushan Hao's words, the others showed confusion on their faces. What kind of treasure could be auctioned as the most precious treasure of the super auction? Not long ago, our Tushan family found an ancient ruin in a mysterious space. After a simple exploration, we found that this ancient ruin belonged to the humankind. Now, our Tushan family is inviting heroes from all over the world. We would like to invite you to explore this ancient human ruin with us. Hearing Tushan Hao, the others were all shocked. Tushan family people had found an ancient human historical site, and they were willing to share it with the others to explore together. Facing the crowd's shock, Tushan Hao chuckled and continued. However, the quota is limited. Therefore, only friends with enough sincerity can get a quota to explore the ancient human ruin. The treasures you find in the ruin will belong to you. Our Tushan family will never ask for them. Chapter 959. Hearing Tushan Hao's words, people in the auction hall instantly became excited. Those unexplored ancient human ruins must be full of opportunities. As long as they could gain some benefits from those ancient human ruins, they might be able to benefit themselves for the rest of their lives. Facing such a rare opportunity, no one would want to miss it. I wonder what price we have to pay to get an entrance ticket. Finally, someone couldn't help but ask Tushan Hao. What price did they have to pay to get this limited opportunity to enter ancient human ruins? Facing this question, Tushan Hao smiled faintly and responded, as long as you are willing to pay over 1,000,000 star stones, you can get an entrance ticket and join this grand event. However, we don't accept star stones, only treasures. Hearing Tushan Hao's words, everyone sank into contemplation. They were trying to figure out which treasures they had that were worth more than 1,000,000 star stones, which they didn't need, could be used to exchange for entrance tickets. Qin Chuan and Ao Feng's excitement instantly cooled down, because they didn't have any treasures that were worth more than 1,000,000 star stones, and they didn't need any treasures that could be used to exchange for entrance tickets. This meant that the two of them basically had no chance to participate in this grand event. You can see a mountain of treasures, but you can't enter it. Ao Feng gave a long sigh and said helplessly, you still have a chance, but I don't have a chance at all. Hearing this, Qin Chuan gave a bitter smile, shook his head, and responded, I don't have a chance. Don't forget that I only have 900,000 star stones. After deducting the service fee, I have even less star stones. Besides, Tushan family doesn't accept star stones. How can I possibly have a chance? I'm not talking about what you're thinking. Ao Feng glanced at Qin Chuan and continued. I remember that Tushan family is trying to recruit you, right? If you tell Tushan family that you want to explore this ancient human ruin, I think they won't refuse you. Hearing Ao Feng's words, Qin Chuan paused slightly. He didn't think about this, but if he asked Tushan Yu about this, he would owe Tushan Yu a big favor. While Qin Chuan was struggling with this, Tushan Hao abruptly announced a new condition. Ladies and gentlemen, what I said earlier is only for the ordinary friends of our Tushan family. As for those who are sitting in the VIP rooms and above, You can enter the ancient human ruins for free without paying anything. Tushan Hao chuckled and responded blandly. This is how our Tushan family treats our guests. If you don't like it, please forgive us. Following Tushan Hao's voice, Sunset responded first. He sounded quite satisfied as he said, Thank you, Tushan family, for your kindness. Thank you. Following Sunset's words, more and more people expressed their gratitude to Tushan family. Since these people could sit in the VIP rooms, they were surely people with high status in Tron Nebula. Asking them to exchange 1,000,000 star stones worth of treasures for a ticket in front of so many people would be a bit shameful. However, Tushan Hao's new condition solved this problem perfectly. Therefore, it wasn't a big deal for these people to thank Tushan family. While these people were feeling satisfied, Qin Chuan and Ao Feng were stunned by this pie that fell from the sky. They never thought that they would be able to enter the ancient human ruins and explore, but unexpectedly, they would unexpectedly get a ticket. Qin Chuan, you're truly my lucky star. Ao Feng laughed and said to Qin Chuan, if it weren't for you auctioning off the barbarian wolf's corpse, we wouldn't have been able to enter this VIP box, and we wouldn't have been able to obtain this admission ticket. Thank you very much. Hearing Ao Feng's words, Qin Chuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He didn't know that such a good thing would happen at the end of this super auction. Soon, the staff of the super auction came to the VIP room to register. Qin Chuan and Ao Feng each received a jade token. When the time came, they would be able to enter the ancient human ruins with these tokens. The Tushan family only recognized tokens, not people. Qin Chuan carefully put away the jade tablet. Then, he put away the 800,000 star stones that the staff had sent over, as well as the ancient strange stone that he had won. After that, he left the super auction site with Ao Feng. Originally, I planned to return to the same galaxy directly after participating in this super auction. But now, because of the exploration of the ancient human ruins, I have to change my plan. I have to stay here until I finish exploring the ancient human ruins. Ao Feng looked at Qin Chuan, but there are still about 2 months before the time set by the Tushan family. I have to find something to do. Qin Chuan was going to study the Tao Rune soon. It would take a whole month, so the waiting time wasn't too long. However, Ao Feng was different. He had nothing to do at all. He couldn't just stay in the hotel for 2 months. In the high-cost environment of Trump City, even Ao Feng, the eldest prince of the same galaxy, would feel the pinch if he stayed in a hotel for 2 months. You can find a way to solve it yourself. I will gather at the observatory tomorrow and then set off to study the Tao Rune. Qin Chuan chuckled and said to Ao Feng, you'd better cultivate hard during this period of time and prepare more things. If you die in the ancient human ruins, it would be too much of a loss. Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Ao Feng rolled his eyes and said to Qin Chuan, are you cursing me? Don't worry, I won't die so easily. Then I wish you good luck. Qin Chuan looked at Ao Feng and said, see you then. Then I also wish you can study the Tao Rune within a month. Ao Feng laughed and said, I'll be waiting for you to use the level 5 battle formation to kill everyone. After some teasing, the two parted ways at the entrance of the super auction. Qin Chuan was going to the hotels prepared by the powerful forces of Tron Nebula for the winners of the various galaxies, while Ao Feng was going to find a hotel by himself. After parting ways with Ao Feng, Qin Chuan directly sent the ancient stone to the runic sword. The runic sword unceremoniously began to devour the magical power contained in the ancient stone. Soon, the magical power on the ancient stone gradually disappeared. The originally indestructible ancient stone was now like an ordinary stone that could be easily crushed. While Qin Chuan was heading to the observatory hotel, he did not know that he had already attracted the attention of the various forces of Tron Nebula. Many people were secretly watching his every move. Chapter 960. Hello. May I ask if this is the hotel prepared for the winner of the Talisman Formation Master Exchange? Qin Chuan stood at the front desk of the hotel and gazed at the plump attendant at the front desk. He felt extremely strange when he saw the single eye on the attendant's face. "Sir, please show me your identification." The single-eyed attendant revealed a smile and displayed a mouthful of sharp teeth in front of Qin Chuan. "You can stay in this hotel for free as long as your identification is verified." Qin Chuan felt extremely uncomfortable when he heard the gentle tone and saw the slightly ferocious appearance of the attendant before him. Truthfully speaking, he was still slightly unaccustomed to the feeling of interacting with other races in the universe. He still needed to get used to it. Qin Chuan took out the identification that Ao Feng had prepared for him. After verification, he obtained his Rune card, 8081. After returning to the hotel room, Qin Chuan originally wanted to rest for a while before starting to cultivate. However, his sharp intuition told him that he seemed to have been targeted by someone. Qin Chuan walked around the hotel room twice before suddenly removing the 4 hidden cameras installed in every corner of the hotel. He looked at the cameras in his hand and frowned. Someone actually installed cameras in such a high-end hotel. While Qin Chuan was pondering these questions, those people who were observing the participants through the cameras expressed their dissatisfaction with Qin Chuan's actions. Could it be that no one told this fellow the rules before he came? Who told him to remove the cameras? What a sharp little fellow. I like him very much. This is a pretty good little fellow. His performance will probably be even better once he knows what the rules are. All right, all of you shut up. Over 100 outstanding talisman formation masters are placed in front of all of you. Why pay so much attention to a little fellow? Along with this last voice, the crowd's discussion about Qin Chuan gradually quieted down. Everything returned to tranquility. However, Qin Chuan was completely unaware of this. In a holy cluster, far away from the celestial cluster, on a huge planet full of huge caves, a huge snow-white demon worm suddenly drilled out of a cave, opened its mouth full of sharp teeth, and let out a sharp roar. As the demonic insect roared, dozens of figures suddenly appeared around the demonic insect and respectfully knelt on one knee to express their respect and submission. "Respected Mr. Devil, what happened to you?" A tall figure looked at the angry devil bug in front of him and was puzzled. Nothing had happened, so why did the devil bug suddenly become angry? Roar! The devil bug turned its head and roared at the tall figure, as if venting its dissatisfaction. A large amount of dark green mucus was sprayed out and covered the tall figure's body, but the tall figure did not seem to feel anything and remained motionless. "I understand. One of your apostles died outside, right?" The tall figure looked at the devil bug and responded, "I will send someone to investigate this matter and give you a satisfactory answer." Hearing the tall figure's words, the devil bug screamed again and then retreated into the cave. The tall figure slowly turned around and looked at the people around him. He said indifferently, "Go and find out which apostle died outside recently. Inform the local action team to find out the cause of the apostle's death." I don't need to say more about what to do. "Yes, Mr. Consul." When the crowd dispersed, the tall figure called Mr. Consul stood alone at the edge of the cave. Under the slightly dim light, his single leg was particularly eye-catching. On the morning of the second day after Qin Chuan arrived at the Observatory Hotel, the representatives of the various powers arrived at the Observatory Hotel one after another. They were prepared to lead everyone to comprehend the Tao Rune. At this moment, Qin Chuan had finally met the talisman array masters of the other galaxies. Amongst the numerous peculiar races of the universe, Qin Chuan, the representative of the humanoid race, was particularly striking. There are really all kinds of races. Qin Chuan looked at the surrounding universe races and whispered, "None of them look like humans. I wonder what their aesthetic standards are like." Just as Qin Chuan was whispering to himself, representatives of various forces slowly came to the hall. Among these representatives, except for the 7th elder of the Tushan clan, Tushan Yu, Qin Chuan did not recognize any of them. However, from the symbols on their chests, these forces were from the metropolis government of Tron Nebula, the Unju Group, and the Skywalk Federation. Among the various forces of Tron Nebula, the metropolis government and the Tushan clan were tied for first place. Below them were the Skywalk Federation, jointly established by various universe races and the richest Unju group. The reason why no other forces were here today was that the other forces had to wait for these forces to pick the good seedlings that they liked before they could enter to select people. This was an unspoken rule that had been in place for many years, and no force could break it. As the representative of the metropolis government, Haifeng appeared to be somewhat arrogant. He raised his chin as if he was looking at people with his nostrils. "You little brats, if any of you are willing to join our metropolis government and work for us, you can come and register with me now. The quota is limited, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you will get it first. It will depend on your performance in the next month." Hearing Haifeng's words, many talisman array masters who were interested in joining the metropolis government went to Haifeng's side to register. The other forces, on the other hand, were indifferent. If they had any seedlings that they liked, they would naturally communicate with them in private. They would never cast a net as wide as Haifeng. However, there was a special tacit understanding between Qin Chuan and Tu Shanyu. After glancing at each other, the two of them nodded slightly and did not communicate much. However, Qin Chuan knew that if he dared to show interest in the other forces, Tu Shanyu's attitude toward him would immediately change. After Haifeng registered the names of the talisman array masters, everyone could finally set off for the location of the Dao runes. The Tushan clan and the Unju group would lead people to the location of the wind attribute Dao runes, while the metropolis government and the Skywalk Federation would lead people to the location of the wood attribute Dao runes. The talisman array masters of each galaxy were free to make their choice. No matter which Dao rune they chose, they could change their choice at any time after arriving at their destination. Qin Chuan naturally chose to go to the location of the wood attribute Dao runes first, because in his opinion, there would be fewer talisman array masters who would choose the wood attribute Dao runes. It would be more convenient for him to do things. After making his choice, Qin Chuan directly boarded the spaceship at the observatory and set off for the location of the wood attribute Dao runes, the Great Jupiter system. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.